The year was 1877, and the sun over the Arizona Territory knew no mercy. It was a hammer, beating the land flat and hard, baking the soil into a cracked mosaic of reddish-brown. This was the country around Dusty Ford, a place named for the shallow, silt-choked crossing on the San Pedro River that was dry 10 months of the year. The land was vast, yes, but it was a vastness of thorn and stone, of mountains that looked like purple bruises on the horizon, and of a sky so blindingly blue it felt like a weight. Here, a person's life was measured in inches of rain and ounces of luck. The air was thin and carried the constant smell of dust and sun-baked creosote. Cattle drives pushed north toward the railheads, leaving trails of churned earth and disease. Mining camps, little more than collections of canvas and raw lumber, clung to the sides of canyons, spitting out rough men with silver fever and short tempers. The roads connecting these outposts of ambition were treacherous, rutted tracks where a broken axle meant a long, dangerous walk. Uncertainty was not a feeling. It was the climate. Eliza May Carter knew this climate better than most. She stood in what was meant to be a cornfield, but the stalks were brittle, yellowed skeletons that rattled in the hot, infrequent breeze. At 20, she was possessed of a beauty that was as unforgiving as the land itself. Her hair, the color of dark honey, was pulled back tight, escaping in damp tendrils around a face that was already learning the lines of determination and worry. Her eyes were a clear, startling green, the color of the river in the brief spring flood, and they missed nothing. She was not tall, but she stood tall, her body made strong and lean by work that would have broken many men. She wore a faded blue cotton shirt and denim trousers, practical and scandalous, and she did not care one bit for the opinions of the gossips in Dusty Ford. She lived here, on this 160-acre patch of stubborn dirt, with her mother, Abigail. The farm was a small, squared-off hope against the enormance of the desert. Their adobe house, little more than 2 rooms and a lean-to kitchen, was clean but bare. The roof was patched. The fences were mended with scavenged wire and hope. It was all they had left after her father, a man with more dreams than sense, had chased a vein of copper into the Dragoon Mountains and never returned, leaving them with a deed, 2 mortgaged mules, and a mountain of debt at the general store. The land was dry. The well her father had dug was going salty. The spring that was supposed to water their fields had slowed to a muddy trickle. Keeping this place afloat was like trying to fill a leaking bucket with a sieve. Every morning, Eliza May rose before the sun, her muscles aching from the day before, and waged her small war. She mended, she hoed, she hauled water. She fought against the inevitable decay with a grim, quiet fury. Abigail Carter was inside, where the heat was trapped and thickened by the smell of boiling beans. She was a slighter, softer woman than her daughter, her spirit worn thin by loss and hardship. She sat at the rough-hewn table, her hands knotted with arthritis, restlessly smoothing a patch of worn calico. The air in the small room was tense. It had been tense for weeks. Eliza May pushed through the door, letting in a rectangle of blinding white light. She pulled off her straw hat and wiped her forehead with her forearm. Abigail did not look up. Her voice was thin, like dry grass rubbing together. Any change? Eliza May went to the water bucket, dipped a tin cup, and drank deeply. The water was lukewarm and tasted of alkali. She shook her head. The spring is almost gone. The corn is finished. Abigail closed her eyes. Her shoulders slumped. What will we do? Eliza May, what in God's name will we do? We will do what we always do. Mama, we will keep on. Eliza May's voice was low but steady. There was no room in it for despair. Despair was a luxury, like shade trees or a deep well. Abigail's hands tightened on the calico. Mr. Henderson at the store, he cannot extend us any more credit. He was kind, but he was firm. The bill is too high. He said Silas Crow was in asking about us. Eliza May went still. The tin cup in her hand suddenly felt very cold. When? Yesterday, he was asking if we were managing, asking if we might be looking to sell. Eliza May turned slowly. The name hung in the air, heavy and dark as a thunderhead. Silas Crow. He was the shadow that stretched over this entire valley. Crow was a man who had come west with nothing and had built an empire of cattle and land. He owned the largest ranch, the C-Bar, which bordered their small property on two sides. He owned the saloon in town, had a controlling interest in the freight company, and it was said he held the paper on half the businesses in Dusty Ford. He was wealthy, but his true currency was influence. The local sheriff, a man named Brody, seemed to spend more time at the C-Bar headquarters than he did in his own office. Crow was a patient man, a spider. He did not rush. He simply waited for people to get into trouble, for the drought to bite, for the debt to mount. Then he would appear, all smiles and reasonable offers, and another small ranch would be swallowed up, absorbed into his ever-growing map. He was greedy, but it was a quiet, respectable, church-going greed that was more dangerous than the loud desperation of the miners. He wants our spring. Eliza May said it flat. It was the only reason their pitiful patch of land was worth anything. Her father had found the spring, the only reliable water on this entire mesa, small as it was. With the drought worsening, that trickle was becoming more precious than gold. Abigail twisted the calico in her lap. He wants it all. Eliza May, he has wanted it ever since your father. She stopped, unable to finish the thought. Well, he cannot have it. Eliza May slammed the cup onto the washstand. The sound was sharp, violent, in the quiet room. I will go into town. I will talk to Mr. Henderson myself. Maybe I can sell the embroidered linens your grandmother left. Abigail's head snapped up, her eyes wide with protest. Oh, Eliza May, no, not those. They are all we have left of her. They are just things. Mama, we cannot eat linens. Eliza May grabbed her hat, her movements sharp. We are not beaten yet. The ride to Dusty Ford was 4 miles of dust and heat. The town was a single wide street of false-fronted buildings huddled under the immense sky. It was loud. Freight wagons rumbled through, their drivers cursing the mule teams. Cowboys, lean and weathered, loitered on the boardwalk outside the saloon, their spurs ringing with each step. Miners, their clothes stained with rock dust, argued over the price of blasting powder. The air was tense, a bad card game, a stray word, a look held too long, and the entire place could explode. Eliza May tied her mule to the hitching post outside Henderson's General Mercantile. She ignored the stares. A woman alone, and especially a woman in trousers, was always a target for bored eyes. She walked with her head high, her gaze fixed forward, a picture of such rigid independence that most men knew better than to speak to her. The store was dim and cool, smelling of coffee beans, cured leather, and smoked bacon. Elias Henderson, a small man with a neat gray beard and worried eyes, was behind the counter. He saw her, and his face fell into lines of genuine regret. Eliza May, he started moving to polish an already clean countertop. I know, Mr. Henderson. Eliza May walked straight to the counter. Mama told me. I am not here to ask for more credit. Elias looked relieved, and then immediately guilty for feeling it. I am sorry. Eliza, you know I would if I could. But my own suppliers, and Silas Crow, holds the note on this building. He has made it clear I am not to be overly generous with folks whose land he is interested in. His voice dropped to a whisper on the last words. So, it is like that. Eliza May's jaw tightened. He is not just waiting anymore. He is pushing. Elias nodded. Miserable. He is pushing everyone. The drought has him spooked, and he wants all the water, from the San Pedro to the Dragoons. He bought out the Jenkins family last week. Just like that, they are gone. Eliza May felt a cold knot form in her stomach. The Jenkins had 3 healthy sons and a good well. If they could not make it, what chance did she and her mother have? She forced the fear down. She unwrapped a small, oilcloth bundle on the counter, revealing the linens. They were beautiful, intricately stitched with blue flowers by a hand long dead. My grandmother's. From Virginia. What will you give me for them? Elias Henderson looked at the needlework, then at Eliza May's proud, desperate face. He sighed. His gaze flickered to the door, as if afraid Crow himself might walk in. I can give you $20 in store credit? Child, it is robbery. They are worth 5 times that. I will take it, Eliza May said. Give me flour, beans, coffee, and salt. She left the store with her supplies, the small victory feeling exactly like a defeat. As she was loading the sacks onto her mule, a shadow fell over her. She did not need to look up to know who it was. The shadow felt different, colder, wider than a normal man's. Miss Carter, a pleasant, deep voice. It is a hard day for such heavy work. Eliza May turned slowly. Silas Crow sat on a fine, tall bay horse, his saddle gleaming with polished silver conchos. He was a handsome man in his 40s, with dark, neatly trimmed hair and a beard touched with gray at the temples. He wore a fine black coat and a clean white shirt. Stark against the dust of the street, he looked more like a senator than a cattleman. He touched the brim of his hat, his smile perfectly polite. Mr. Crow, her voice was flat, giving him nothing. I was just speaking with Sheriff Brody, he said, gesturing with his riding glove toward the sheriff's office, where the man in question was visible, leaning back in his chair with his boots on the desk. We were just remarking on what a trial this drought has been for the good people of this valley. A true trial. Eliza May finished tying the last knot on the saddle. Some people find opportunity in other people's trials. Crow's smile widened, as if she had told a clever joke. You are your father's daughter. Right enough, all fire and vinegar. He was a good man. Samuel Carter, a dreamer. But this land, Miss Carter, this land is hard on dreamers. He leaned forward slightly in his saddle, his voice dropping to a confidential, almost kindly tone. It is no place for 2 women alone, especially with the bank in Tucson holding your mortgage. And Mr. Henderson, well, Elias is a good man, but he is a businessman. My mother and I are managing. Mr. Crow, are you? His gaze drifted from her face, down to her worn trousers, to the thin mule, and then over to the store window, where Elias Henderson had quickly ducked out of sight. His eyes came back to hers, sharp and assessing. Your father's spring is nearly dry. Your corn is dead. You have not branded a new calf in 2 years. I am not a gossip, Miss Carter. I simply make it my business to know what happens in my valley. Eliza May felt a flush of anger rise up her neck. This valley does not belong to you. Not yet, he said, his voice still pleasant. But I am a man who believes in order, in progress. That land, your land, is sitting wasted. That water, little as it is, could be put to good use. Watering 1,000 head of my cattle. Your tiny farm is standing in the way of progress. It is my home. A home you cannot afford to keep, he said it gently, as if stating a simple, sad fact. She stared at him, her green eyes 2 chips of cold fire. What do you want? He straightened up, satisfied. He had brought her to the point. I want to help you, Miss Carter. I am a neighbor, after all. Your mortgage payment is due on the 1st of the month. That is 3 days from now. $200. A steep sum. And then there is your bill at Henderson's. He shook his head. A perfect mask of sympathy. I am prepared, as a gesture of neighborly goodwill, to take that land off your hands. I will pay off the bank in Tucson. I will clear your debt with Henderson's store, and I will give you $500 in cash, enough for you and your mother to buy tickets back east, to Virginia, perhaps, where the land is civilized, where a lady like you belongs. The offer hung in the dusty air between them. It was generous. It was practical. It was salvation. $500 was a fortune. It was an end to the worry. The back-breaking work, the constant, grinding fear. She could see her mother's face, the relief. She could feel the softness of an Eastern train seat. Silas Crow watched her. He saw the flicker in her eyes, the slight relaxing of her shoulders. He had seen it all before. This was the moment they always broke. Eliza May looked down at the dust on her boots. She thought of her father, digging the well by hand, his face caked in mud, cheering when he hit the first damp sand. She thought of her mother's hands, planting the rose bush by the porch that still, stubbornly, produced one or two small, pale flowers each June. She thought of the freedom that came with owning the ground beneath her feet. No matter how poor or dry that ground was, it was theirs. She looked back up at Silas Crow. His smile was waiting. Her voice was very quiet, but it cut through the street noise like a honed blade. "I believe you are right about one thing, Mr. Crow." Oh, he raised an eyebrow, indulgent. "This land is hard on dreamers." She gathered the mule's reins in her hand. "But it is even harder on thieves." The smile vanished from Silas Crow's face. It did not fade. It was snuffed out, leaving his eyes as dead and cold as river stones. "I am offering you a fair price, Miss Carter, a more than fair price, and I am declining it." She put her foot in the stirrup. "You will reconsider." It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. The bank in Tucson is not as sentimental as I am. When they foreclose, I will buy your land at the sheriff's auction for half of what I am offering you now, and you and your mother will leave with nothing. Think about that. Think about your mother's comfort." He was right. He was entirely right. The logic was as cold and sharp as a knife. Selling now was the smart thing to do. Selling now was the only thing to do. Eliza May swung herself up onto the mule. She looked down at the wealthy, powerful man on his fine horse. "We will manage, Mr. Crow, or we will not, but we will not sell, not to you." She pulled the mule's head around and kicked its thin flanks, riding out of town without a backward glance, the weight of the flour and beans feeling impossibly heavy, and the weight of her choice feeling heavier still. Silas Crow did not move. He watched her ride away, a small, stubborn figure disappearing into the shimmering heat. He did not look angry. He looked patient. He looked at the dust cloud she left behind. And then he turned his horse and rode toward the sheriff's office. The time for polite offers, he decided, was over. The ride home from Dusty Ford was a silent, churning misery. Eliza May Carter pushed the mule, its back now laden with the meager supplies her grandmother's linens had bought. Every hoof fall in the thick dust seemed to echo Silas Crow's words. 3 days, $200. You will leave with nothing. He had spoken the truth. That was the part that lodged in her throat like a fishbone. The truth, in the mouth of a man like Crow, was the cruelest weapon of all. When she reached the small adobe house, the sun was a swollen orange orb, bleeding its color into the western hills. She unloaded the sacks of flour and beans, her movements mechanical. Abigail was waiting just inside the door, her face a pale question in the dim light. Elia May did not need to speak. She walked past her mother and placed the sacks on the floor by the pantry. "He gave you credit." Then Abigail's voice was thin with a desperate hope. Eliza May untied her hat, her fingers fumbling with the string. "I sold grandmother's linens." Abigail let out a small, wounded sound, like an animal. "Oh, Eliza May." "It bought us flour." Eliza May's voice was rough. "We will eat." She could not bring herself to tell her mother about the meeting. She could not add Crow's name to the already heavy air in the room. That night, they ate boiled beans and cornbread in a silence that was louder than any argument. The mortgage payment sat between them on the rough table. An invisible, monstrous guest. $200. They might as well have needed 200 stars from the sky. 2 days passed. The dread in the small house thickened. It was the 31st of the month. Tomorrow, the man from the bank in Tucson would ride out. Or worse, Sheriff Brody would ride out, holding the foreclosure paper, with Silas Crow riding politely behind him. Eliza May woke before the sun, as she always did. She could not stay still. She could not sit and wait for the end. She left her mother staring into a cold cup of coffee, her hands trembling. "I am checking the fences. Mama?" "Be careful," Abigail whispered. To the empty air, Eliza May was already gone. She carried her father's Winchester rifle. It was an old model, heavy and beautifully balanced, its stock worn smooth by her father's hands and now her own. She was not afraid of snakes or coyotes. She was afraid of the two-legged animals that wore Silas Crow's brand. She walked the perimeter of their land, her eyes scanning the cracked earth, the brittle skeletons of mesquite and cholla. She was near the western edge, a place of tumbled red boulders and a deep, dry wash that marked the border with Crow's sprawling C-Bar ranch. It was quiet, too quiet. The only sound was the buzz of a fly and the distant cry of a hawk. Then she heard it. It was not the wind. It was the pound of shod hooves on hard earth, moving fast and shouting, the sharp, ugly yells of men in a hunt. Eliza May dropped into a crouch behind a high cluster of sandstone. She was hidden, screened by a tangle of thorny acacia. She peered through the branches. A man burst from the wash, running. He moved with a desperate, ground-eating lope that was pure survival. He was Apache, lean as a whip. He wore only hide breeches and a cotton shirt torn open at the chest. His black hair was long, held back from his face by a simple cloth band. He ran as if the devil himself was on his heels, his chest heaving, his bare feet miraculously finding purchase on the stone and thorn. He carried only a knife at his belt. Behind him, perhaps 300 yards back and closing fast, came the pursuit. 4 riders. She knew them. They were not C-Bar cowboys. They were the hard men Silas Crow kept for work that did not involve cattle. Their leader was a man named Harlan, a thick brute with a beard like dirty wire, who was known to do Crow's evictions. They were fanned out, pushing the running man, yelling and whooping, enjoying it. And with them, strangely, was a light supply wagon, pulled by 2 mules, its driver whipping them to keep up with the riders. Eliza May's first instinct was to press herself into the rock, to become invisible. This was not her fight. This was Apache business, cavalry business, Crow business. It was nothing to do with her. The Apache was running toward her land, toward the small, rocky canyon where her father's spring trickled its last. He was looking for cover. The riders were gaining. Harlan fired his pistol into the air. "Nowhere to go, Redskin," he bellowed, laughing. They were getting close. And then Eliza May saw it. They had reached her fence line, a sagging strand of barbed wire strung between juniper posts. They did not slow. One of the riders took a pair of heavy cutters from his saddlebag, leaned down, and snapped the wire. Just like that, they rode through the gap they had made onto Carter land. The wagon followed, rumbling over the broken fence as if it were nothing but a twig in the path. Eliza May felt a jolt, a cold shock of anger that pushed the fear aside. They were on her land. They had cut her fence, the arrogance of it, the casual violation. It was the same as Crow in the street, his polite voice telling her she was finished. This was his answer. This was the progress he had spoken of. The Apache stumbled. He was spent. He fell hard, rolling in the dust, and came up on one knee. He did not get up to run again. He pulled the knife from his belt and waited, his head bowed, sucking in great, ragged breaths. He was making his stand, a hopeless final stand against 4 armed men on horses. Harlan saw him and pulled his horse to a sliding stop, raising his rifle. The other men circled, laughing, savoring the moment. They were 50 yards from the Apache. They were standing not 10 yards from Eliza May's failed cornfield. It was the trespass that did it. Not mercy, not justice. It was the raw, primal instinct of the landowner, the animal protecting its den. It was the sight of Silas Crow's men on her property, about to finish their cruel sport on ground that was hers. She raised the Winchester. Her heart was a drum against her ribs. She was a good shot. Her father had made sure of it. Never shoot at a man unless you mean to kill him. Eliza May. His voice echoed in her memory. And you never mean to kill him. It's a weight you cannot carry. Shoot at what he rides, or what he needs. Her eyes locked on the supply wagon. It had stopped. The driver watching the show. It was a long shot, over 100 yards. She rested the heavy barrel on the sandstone. She looked past the riders, past the doomed Apache, and centered her sight on the wagon. Not the mules, the front wheel. She let out her breath, slowly. The world narrowed to the front sight, the rear sight, and the thick, wooden spokes of that wheel. She squeezed the trigger. The crack of the rifle was immense, a solitary thunderclap that ripped the air. The driver of the wagon screamed. The lead ball, heavy and true, struck the wheel hub. It did not just break. The old, dry wood, baked by a decade of sun, exploded. Spokes snapped and flew. The wheel collapsed, and the wagon, its support gone, pitched violently forward and slammed onto its side with a crash of splintering wood and metal. Sacks of feed and supplies burst open. 2 large barrels, dark and heavy, rolled free, one of them splitting as it hit a rock. The chaos was immediate. The riders spun their horses around, their face masks of shock, staring at the rocks. "Who in the hell?" Harlan roared, dropping his rifle to control his spooked horse. "Where did that come from?" In that one sharp moment of confusion, the Apache was gone. He did not pause to see who had fired. He did not look back. He used the instant of distraction and moved. He was a shadow, flowing over the rock and into the narrow crevice of the spring canyon, vanishing as if he had never been. Eliza May did not move. She chambered another round, the metallic shuck click sounding impossibly loud to her own ears. She waited. Harlan and his men stared from the empty spot where the Apache had been, to the ruined wagon, to the silent, menacing cluster of rocks. They were furious. "It's Carterland," one of them yelled. "It's that crazy woman." "Show yourself," Harlan bellowed. But his voice had lost its confident laugh. They were exposed. They were riders, not soldiers trained to storm rocks. They did not know who was in there, or if they were alone. Harlan cursed, a long, filthy stream of invective. He looked at the wagon. It was a total loss. Its axle clearly snapped. He looked at the dark stain spreading from the split barrel, and his face got even darker. "Leave it, leave him. Let's get back. Crow will want to hear about this." They wheeled their horses, rode back through the gap they had made in her fence, and disappeared into the wash, leaving the broken wagon and its spilled contents behind. Eliza May waited. She counted to 500. Her body shaking so hard her teeth rattled. The silence of the desert rushed back in, vast and accusing. The sun was hot on her back. She had done it. She had fired on Silas Crow's men. She had declared a war she could not possibly win. Slowly, her legs trembling, she stood up. She walked out from the cover of the rocks, the Winchester held at her hip. She walked to the wrecked wagon. The smell hit her first. It was the barrel that had split, kerosene. A wave of nausea and cold terror washed over her. They were not just chasing an Apache. The wagon was not for supplies. They were carrying kerosene. For her house, for her barn, for the dry fields. This was Crow's answer to her refusal. He was going to burn them out. She turned, her stomach churning, and looked at the canyon where the Apache had disappeared. She should go home, run, bolt the door, tell her mother, pack their things. But she found herself walking toward the spring. He was there. He was sitting on a flat rock just above the muddy pool, washing a long, shallow gash on his forearm. He did not look surprised to see her. As she approached, he stood. He was taller than she had thought, and younger, perhaps her own age. His face was all sharp angles, a strong nose and a hard jaw. But it was his eyes that held her. They were black and intensely quiet, watching her with an unblinking, unreadable gaze. He was not afraid. He was not grateful. He was just there. Eliza May stopped 20 feet away, the rifle still in her hands, but she did not raise it. "They are gone," she said. Her voice was a croak. He nodded once, his eyes flicking to the gash on his arm, then back to her. "They broke your fence." "I saw." "You shot the wagon." It was a statement, not a question. "It was on my land." The words felt small. It was the only defense she could offer. He studied her for a long, heavy moment. It felt as if he were seeing things she did not even know about herself. "They were not hunting me," he said. His voice was low, with a rhythm unlike any she had ever heard. "Not just me. They were hunting what I did." "What did you do?" "I burned his north grazing land 2 nights ago, where he moved the cattle he stole from the Jenkins family." Eliza May's breath caught. "Now," the man continued, his gaze flicking to the ruined wagon, "he brings kerosene to burn your home. That wagon was for you." "How do you know that?" she whispered. "Silas Crow is a man who builds his house on the ashes of other houses. I know this man. I have watched him for many moons." He took a step closer. He was still wary, but his posture had changed. "You did not save me." "No," Eliza May admitted. "You saved yourself. You saved this." He gestured to the land, the spring. "I saw them on my property. They cut my fence." "You fought," he said. He stopped, just out of arm's reach. "My name is Taza." Eliza May just stared. The name meant nothing to her, but the man, Taza, was suddenly the most solid and dangerous thing in her world. He looked at her small, trembling frame, at the rifle she held like a seasoned veteran, at the raw terror and stubborn defiance warring in her green eyes. He saw not a white woman, not an enemy, but another creature trapped by the same man. "You are cornered," Taza said, "but you are not a rabbit. You are a cat. You have claws." He reached up to the simple leather thong around his neck. He pulled it over his head. On it hung a single ring. It was not silver or gold. It looked to be carved from antler, polished smooth as glass by long handling, with a simple 3-line pattern etched deep into its white surface. He held it out in his open palm. Eliza May stared at the offering. "What is that?" "In my way, when a life is owed, a mark is given. This is my mark. It means I am bound to protect what protects me." She recoiled, shaking her head. "I do not want your mark. I do not want any part of this. I just want my farm. I want to be left alone." "You are already a part of this," Taza said, his voice flat, stating a fact as cold as Crow's. "You were part of it when your father found this spring. Crow made you part of it when he looked at your water. You made yourself part of it when you fired that rifle." His hand, holding the ring, did not waver. "They will be back. Crow will not forgive the wagon. He will not forgive you. He will send Harlan again. Or Brody, or both." She looked from the strange, pagan-looking ring to his dark, unyielding face. "I do not need saving, Apache." Her voice was a fierce whisper. "I know," Taza said. For the first time, the granite lines of his face softened. A flicker of something that was almost a smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You are the one who fights. You are the only harvest I need to save me." He stepped forward, into her space. Before she could react, he took her left hand, the one not holding the rifle. His fingers were warm and calloused, engulfing hers. He pressed the antler ring into her palm. The touch was brief, electric, and gone. "Keep it," he said. "Wear it. When they come again, I will see it, and I will fight with you." Before she could form a word, before she could throw the ring back at him, he turned. He moved into the shadows of the canyon. He made no sound. He was a solid man of flesh and blood one instant, and the next he was a ghost, swallowed by the rock and the heat. Eliza May Carter stood alone, the silence of the desert pressing in. She looked at the wrecked wagon, at the dark, spreading stain of kerosene, and at the impossible, foreign object in her hand. The mortgage was due tomorrow. Silas Crow wanted her dead, and now, a hunted Apache warrior had just given her a gift. She closed her fist around the ring, the carved edges biting into her skin. She was shaking, but not from fear anymore. It was a new, cold, terrible anger. She turned and ran back to the house. Eliza May Carter ran back to the house, the small, carved ring a hard knot in her fist. She burst through the door, her face pale, her chest heaving. The heavy Winchester rifle was still in her other hand. Abigail Carter looked up from the table, her hands flying to her mouth. She saw her daughter's wild eyes. The rifle. Her first thought was of Silas Crow. He has come, she thought. He has come for us. Eliza May, what is it? What has happened? Abigail's voice was a reedy whisper. Eliza May leaned against the closed door, as if to bolt it against the entire world. She told her. She told her everything, the words spilling out in a rush. She told her about the men cutting the fence. She told her about the Apache running. She told her about the wagon, and the barrels, and the dark, wet stain on the ground. Abigail's face, already pale, turned the color of ash. Kerosene? Yes, Mama, kerosene. Eliza May's voice was shaking. They were not just chasing him. They were coming to burn us out, tonight or tomorrow. They were coming to burn us. Abigail began to rock back and forth. A low moan caught in her throat. We are finished. We are finished. What did you do? I stopped them. Eliza May's voice was flat. What? I fired the rifle. I shot the wagon wheel. Abigail stopped rocking. She stared at her daughter as if she were a stranger. You shot at them. You shot at Silas Crow's men. They were on our land. Oh, merciful God. Abigail stood up, her hands fluttering. Eliza May, you have doomed us. You have declared war on that man. He will not stop now. He will come back. He will bring the sheriff. He will bring everyone. We must pack. We must leave. Now. We will take the mule and what we can carry. No. Abigail, frantic, pulled a carpet bag from under the bed. We will go to Tucson. We will disappear. No, Mama. Eliza May's voice was hard, cutting through her mother's panic. Do you not understand? They were coming to burn us out anyway. Even if I had hidden, even if I had done nothing, running would not have saved us. Being quiet did not save the Jenkins family. But to shoot at them? Abigail was weeping now, openly. Eliza May walked to her mother and grabbed her shoulders. Her grip was hard. He was going to burn us out. Mama, I shot a wagon wheel. That is all. I protected our home. Abigail looked at her daughter's face, at the hard set of her jaw and the cold fire in her green eyes. The girl she had raised was gone. In her place was this woman, holding a rifle, smelling of dust and gunpowder. And the Apache, Abigail's voice was barely audible. Where is he? He ran. He got away. Did he speak to you? Yes. Abigail pulled away, her fear turning to a new, cold dread. What is in your hand? Eliza May opened her fist. The antler ring sat on her palm, white against her skin. He gave it to me. He said he would protect me. Abigail stared at the object. It was a heathen thing, a savage mark. She crossed herself. Get it out. Throw it away. It is bad luck. It is the devil's work. Eliza May closed her hand around it. She said nothing. She went to her room, a small alcove separated by a curtain. She did not throw the ring away. She found the leather thong it had been on and put it in a small wooden box with her mother's wedding band and a tintype of her father. She hid the box. She had fired on Silas Crow's men. She had spoken to a fugitive Apache. She had $10 worth of food and a mortgage due on the morrow. The morrow came. It was the first of the month. It came not with riders, not with fire, but with a quiet, sweating man in a dusty black suit, riding a tired horse. He was from the bank in Tucson. Eliza May met him on the porch. She did not hold the rifle, but she left it standing by the door, where he could see it. Abigail watched from the window, her face a pale blur. The man, Mr. Harris, cleared his throat. He did not want to be here. He asked for the mortgage payment, $200. Eliza May looked him in the eye. I do not have it. Mr. Harris sighed. He had expected this. He took a sheaf of papers from his saddlebag. He said he was truly sorry. He said the bank had no choice but to begin foreclosure proceedings. Abigail let out a choked cry from behind the door. Eliza May's voice did not waver. What does that mean? It means the property reverts to the bank. Miss Carter, it will be sold at public auction in Dusty Ford to satisfy the debt. The auction is set for 10 days from today. 10 days. The words were a reprieve and a death sentence. Eliza May stepped closer. If I can get the money before then, can I stop this? Mr. Harris hesitated. He was a banker, but he was a man. He looked at the desperation in her eyes, the thinness of her frame. Technically, yes, if you can deliver the full amount, $200, plus a $20 fee for the processing and my travel. To the bank office in Tucson before the 10th, I will tear up the writ. $220. He leaned in, his voice low. He advised her to be quick. He said Silas Crow had already sent a telegram to the bank. He offered to buy the mortgage note from them directly. Right now, the bank was considering it. It would save them the trouble of an auction. He said he was sorry. He said he would hold off on selling the note for as long as he could. But his partners were businessmen. He gave her the paper. He tipped his hat. He mounted his horse and rode away, eager to leave this place of dust and impending violence. Eliza May stood on the porch, the paper in her hand. 10 days. 10 days to find $220? It was an impossible sum. She felt the fight drain out of her. Crow had won. He had not needed fire. He had just used the law, a clean, sharp blade she could not fight. The next few days were a quiet hell. Abigail did not speak. She moved about the house like a ghost, cleaning things that were already clean, her eyes vacant. Eliza May worked. She had to. She could not sit still. She took the mule and dragged rocks to build up the side of the wash, a pointless, back-breaking labor. She mended the fence the men had cut, her hands bleeding from the barbs. She was alone, but she was being watched. She felt it the first day, a prickle on her neck. She stopped, scanning the high red rocks that marked the western edge of her property. There was nothing, just the heat and the buzzards circling high up. She went back to work, her nerves stretched thin. The next day, she was clearing brush from the dry spring bed, a hopeless, grieving task. She heard a sound, not a footfall, a displacement of air. She looked up. On the ridge, 100 yards away, stood Taza. He was a silhouette against the blinding sky, still as the rock he stood on. He was just watching. Eliza May's heart jumped. She was terrified of him. She was terrified of him being seen. She raised a hand, not in greeting, but in a gesture to ward him off. Go! Get away! He did not move. He just watched. She worked for another hour, her back crawling. Every time she looked up, he was there, a silent, unmoving guardian. On the third day, she almost stepped on it. A large diamondback rattlesnake, coiled in the shade of a mesquite tree right where she was about to lay her tools. She froze. Her breath caught. Before she could even step back, a rock, the size of a fist, flew from the canyon wall. It struck the snake with a sickening, heavy thud, breaking its spine. The snake writhed, its tail buzzing in a furious, dying rage. Eliza May scrambled back, her heart hammering. She looked up at the rocks. Taza was there. Much closer this time. He was perhaps 60 yards away. He looked at her, then at the snake. He nodded once, a gesture of grim affirmation, and then he was gone. He did not walk away. He simply melted back into the cracks of the earth. She did not see him for the rest of the day, but that evening, when she went to the back door, a rabbit was lying on the stoop. It was cleaned, ready for the pot. Abigail saw it and refused to touch it. She said it was savage meat. Eliza May stewed it with their last few onions. It was the first fresh meat they had eaten in a month. She ate it alone, her mother watching, and she did not care. She had 7 days left. She needed information. She needed an ally. She needed someone who was not a ghost on a ridge. She rode to Dusty Ford, but she avoided the main street. She tied her mule behind the SA office. She went to the small, neat adobe house that belonged to Arthur and Nellie Boone. Nellie was her only friend in this town. She was a round, cheerful woman with red hair and a quick laugh, married to the town's quiet, observant assayer. Nellie Boone knew every secret in Dusty Ford before the person involved had even decided it was a secret. Nellie opened the door and pulled Eliza May inside in one motion. "Gracious, child, you look like you have been pulled backwards through a cactus." Her voice was a warm rush. She pushed Eliza May into a chair and pressed a cup of coffee into her hands. "You are skin and bones. Arthur, look, Eliza May is here." Arthur Boone, a slender man with ink stains on his fingers, nodded a greeting from his desk. Eliza May took the coffee, but she could not drink. She told Nellie everything: the mortgage, the 10 days, the wagon, and the kerosene. She did not mention Taza. Nellie's bright, freckled face grew hard. The laughter lines around her eyes disappeared. That snake, that low, cold snake, Silas Crow. She told Eliza May what she knew. The town was buzzing. Harlan and Crow's other men had been in the saloon, drinking and bragging. They were furious. They told everyone they had been ambushed by a whole band of Apache and that the crazy Carter woman had fired on them. Sheriff Brody, Nellie said, was telling everyone that Eliza May was harboring fugitives, that she was a danger to the good, God-fearing people of the town. "They are building a case. Eliza May," Nellie leaned in, her voice low. "They are poisoning everyone against you. Silas Crow does not want this to go to auction." Eliza May was confused, but the banker said, "The banker is in Tucson. Crow is here." Nellie tapped the table. "Crow wants that land, but he wants it clean. He is afraid of you. You shot at him. He thinks you are unpredictable. He wants you gone before the auction. He wants to make sure you cannot show up with the money." "How?" "He will have Brody arrest you." Nellie said it flat. "For firing on his men. For aiding a fugitive. They are just waiting. They are letting you sweat." Eliza May felt the trap close. The law was just another one of Crow's tools. Then she confessed. She told Nellie about the Apache, that he was alone, that he was watching her farm, that he had saved her from a rattlesnake. Nellie did not look shocked. She did not recoil. She looked at Eliza May with a deep, sober understanding. "Then he is the only one in this valley you can trust, because he hates Crow as much as you do." Nelia stood and filled a cloth sack with food, bread, cheese, and some dried apples. "You cannot be seen with him. You cannot tell anyone. This town, they are good people, but they are scared. Crow owns their jobs. He owns their debts, and they hate the Apache. They will turn on you in a second if they think you have sided with him. They will call you an Indian lover, and Brody will have all the excuse he needs." Nellie pushed the sack into her hands. "Arthur and we have $40 saved. It is not 200, but it is yours. Take it. Take the stagecoach east. Go home to Virginia." Eliza May looked at the sack and at her friend's worried, earnest face. She pushed it back. Gently, "I cannot, but thank you. Nellie." "I know," Nellie said, her voice full of sorrow. "That is what I was afraid of." Eliza May rode home, the weight of the town's judgment heavy on her. She had 6 days, She had no money. Her only friend had offered her escape. Her only protector was a fugitive. She found him by the well. He was not on the ridge. He was standing right there, by the salty, dying pool of water. She pulled up, her heart leaping into her throat. He did not turn. He was studying the damp, alkali-crusted earth. He spoke, "This water is dead. It is salt. It is what is killing your corn." "Well, I know," she said, her voice sharp with fear and frustration. She slid off the mule, keeping the animal between them. "What do you want? You cannot be here. They are looking for you. They will arrest me." He turned to her. His face was unreadable in the twilight. "He tells me they are looking for you, too." "How do you know?" "I listen." He said, "The men in the saloon, the sheriff, they say you are a friend to the Apache. They say you fired on white men." "It is your fault." The accusation burst out of her, hot and unfair. "You burned his grazing land. You brought this on me." He was silent for a moment. He looked at her, and his gaze was not angry. It was surprisingly gentle. "He stole that land from the Jenkins family. He stole their cattle. I burned the grass he meant to feed them with. I did not start this war. I am just fighting it." He looked around. At the small, failing farm. He told her, "Silas Crow will kill you for this water. He does not care about you. He does not care about me. He only cares about the land and the water. We are the same. You and I, we are just in his way." Eliza May stared at him. The truth of his words settled on her. He was right. She and this man, this stranger, they were the same. They were thorns in Crow's side. He asked her about the ring. She did not answer. He told her she was a fool not to wear it. He said a mark has power. It shows you have allies. She asked him why he cared. Why was he helping her? It was not his land. It was not his fight. He stepped around the mule. He was close now. She could smell the faint scent of wood smoke and the desert on him. He was strong. She saw that. His arms were corded with muscle. But it was his eyes that held her. They were sincere. There was no lie in them. He told her he watched her. He watched her mend the fence. He watched her haul the water. He watched her stand up to the banker. "You do not run," he said. "My people, they run. We have run for so long. We have forgotten what it is to stand on a piece of ground and say mine. You are small, but you do not run. You remind me of what we once were." It was more than he had ever said. It was a confession. He told her he would not let Crow take this place. She looked at him, at his earnest, dangerous face. She was tired of being scared. She was tired of being alone. She was filled with doubt. A future with this man was impossible. It was a death sentence. But a future without him, that was also a death sentence. She asked him what he wanted her to do. He just looked at her. He told her to fight. He turned and walked away, not toward the rocks, but toward the dry wash. He said there was water there, deep, and he would find it. Eliza May watched him go. She was more confused than ever. She did not know if he truly wanted to help her, or if he was using her to hurt Crow. She did not know if he felt anything for her, or if he just respected her fight. She went inside, into the dark, silent house. Abigail was already in bed, her back to the room. Eliza May went to the small wooden box. She took out the leather thong. She pulled it over her head. The carved antler ring was cold, and then it was warm, resting against her skin, hidden beneath her cotton shirt. It was a secret. It was a promise. She did not know what it meant, but it was the only thing she had. The antler ring was a small, secret weight against her skin. It did not give her courage, not yet, but it was a focus. It was a choice made. She had 5 days until the auction. 5 days to find a miracle. Silas Crow, however, was not a man to wait on the slow mechanics of the law, even when he owned it. His first move came 2 days later, not with fire, but with the clank of spurs on the packed earth of her yard. Sheriff Brody. He did not ride alone. He brought 2 deputies, slack-jawed men who looked like they were more comfortable on a saloon stool than a horse. Brody himself was a large man, his belly swelling over his gun belt. He had a face that looked boiled, all red skin and small, shrewd eyes. He sat his horse and spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust, just missing the toe of Eliza May's boot. She stood on the porch, her arms crossed. She had left the rifle inside. She would not give him the excuse. "Mornin', Miss Carter." Brody's voice was a lazy drawl, but his eyes were sharp. "Just making my rounds. Heard some disturbing reports." Eliza May said nothing. "Heard you had some trouble out here a few days back." Brody leaned on his saddle horn. "Heard a C-bar wagon was destroyed, on your property, and that you were seen firing a rifle. I was protecting my home." "From what?" "Men who cut my fence." Brody's eyes narrowed. "Men cutting a fence is trespass. Firing on him is attempted murder. That is a serious thing." "They were carrying kerosene. Sheriff, they were coming to burn us out." Abigail, who had been hovering inside, let out a small, terrified squeak. Brody's face went hard. "That is a mighty strong accusation. Miss Carter, Harlan and his men said they were tracking a fugitive. An Apache. Said he ran onto your land. Said you gave him cover. Now, harboring a fugitive, especially a hostile, that is a crime against the territory. That can get you sent to Yuma." Eliza May felt the cold. He was building his cage, bar by bar. "I did not harbor anyone. I shot a wheel on a wagon that was on my land, carrying fuel to burn my home." Brody's small eyes flicked to the rifle standing by the door. "You are all alone out here. You and your ma, folks in town, are getting nervous. They do not like the idea of an Apache lover in their midst. Makes them feel unsafe." He smiled, a thin, unpleasant curl of his lips. "The auction is in 4 days. You got $220. Miss Carter, you know I do not." "Well," he straightened up, gathering his reins. "That is a shame, because Silas Crow, he is a civic-minded man. He is ready to pay your debt. Take this troublesome piece of land off your hands, and save the county the trouble of an auction. And he is still willing to give you that $500 cash, as a courtesy, so you and your ma can get on the stage and go somewhere safe." Eliza May stared at him. The $500. Crow's neighborly offer. It was not a courtesy. It was a threat. It was the price of her silence, of her surrender. "Think on it." Brody said, "He told me to tell you the offer is good until sundown tomorrow. After that, well, after that, I might just find cause to act on these disturbing reports." He tipped his hat, a parody of politeness. His deputies, who had been silent, grinned. They turned their horses and rode away, leaving a cloud of dust and the thick, suffocating smell of injustice. Abigail collapsed onto the chair. "He is going to arrest you. He is going to send you to prison. Take the money." "Eliza May, please, I am begging you, take the money. There is no shame in it. We have lost—" "I cannot. Mama." Eliza May's voice was hollow. She walked out past the porch, into the dead cornfield. She felt Taza's eyes on her. She knew he was out there, on the ridge. She looked toward the rocks, a fierce, desperate plea in her gaze. That night, the attack was not on the house. It was on her last hope of escape. She was woken by a sharp, splitting crack. It was not a gunshot. It was wood. She ran to the window. In the pale, thin moonlight, she saw them. 2 men. It was Harlan, Crow's brutish foreman, and another man. They were at the lean-to shed where she kept her father's old buckboard wagon. It was her only way to haul anything, her only way to get to Tucson, her only transport other than the single mule. They were not trying to be quiet. They were being loud on purpose, an act of terror. They had axes. Eliza May watched, helpless, as they hacked at the wagon. They shattered the wheels. They broke the axles. They smashed the wagon bed. It was a frenzy of destruction, punctuated by their low, cruel laughter. Abigail was weeping in the next room. Eliza May grabbed the Winchester. She leveled it at the window. She could shoot. She could kill them both. Her hands were shaking. "It is a weight you cannot carry," her father's voice. And she knew, with a sickening certainty, that this was what they wanted. They wanted her to fire. They wanted her to give Brody the excuse he needed. They were baiting her. She lowered the rifle, her breath catching in a sob of pure, undiluted rage. She could do nothing. She could only stand and watch as they destroyed the last, best thing her father had built. When they were done, Harlan walked to the front of the house. He stood 30 yards from the porch. "The offer is off. Crazy woman." Harlan's voice was a drunken roar. "Crow is done asking nice. The sheriff will be here in the morning. Better pack your things for Yuma." They laughed, mounted their horses, and rode away. The silence that fell was worse than the noise. It was the silence of total defeat. Eliza May sat at the table, the rifle on her lap. She did not cry. She was beyond tears. She waited for the dawn. She waited for Brody. Just before the sky began to gray, she heard a sound at the door. Not a knock, a scratching. She raised the rifle, her heart stopping. The door pushed open a crack. "Taza!" He slipped inside like a shadow, his hand raised in a gesture of peace. He looked at her, at the rifle, at her dead white face. His eyes were black and bright with an urgent intelligence. Abigail screamed, a short, terrified sound. Taza ignored her. He spoke to Eliza May, his voice a low, rapid whisper. "They will be back, the sheriff. He is coming at sunup." "I know." Her voice was toneless. "You cannot be here." Eliza May looked at him. "Where will I go? They have broken my wagon. I have a mule." He shook his head. "No. You do not run. You hide." He pointed to the floor. "The root cellar." The root cellar. It was a small, damp hole under the kitchen floor, covered by a heavy trap door. "They will find me." "No, I will make sure they do not." He looked at Abigail. She was frozen in her chair, staring at him. "She will tell them you ran. You took the mule and you ran, in the night." Abigail just whimpered. Taza grabbed Eliza May's arm. His grip was like iron. "There is no time. Get in. Take water. Do not make a sound. No matter what you hear, do not come out until I come for you." She looked at his face. The sincerity was gone. In its place was the hard, sharp look of a warrior. She trusted it more. She nodded. She grabbed a canteen of water and a blanket. She looked at her mother. "Mama, tell them I ran. Please." She lifted the trap door. The smell of damp earth rose to meet her. She climbed down. Taza lowered the heavy door over her. It was pitch black. She heard them, moments later. Sun up, Brody was punctual. She heard his voice, booming. "Eliza May Carter, come on out. You are under arrest." She heard her mother's voice, thin and terrified. "She is gone. She is gone. She took the mule and ran in the night." She heard Brody curse. She heard them enter the house. She heard their heavy boots on the floorboards, just inches above her head. They were walking over her. "Search it!" Brody yelled. She heard them ransacking the small house. They overturned the table. They threw open the pantry. They pulled down her mother's linens. Harlan's voice. "She is not here. Sheriff, the mule is gone, too." Brody cursed again. "Find her. I want her in irons before noon." She could not have gotten far. She heard them leave. She heard the horses thunder out of the yard. She stayed in the black, suffocating silence for hours. She did not know what Taza had meant. "I will make sure they do not." She must have slept, a fitful, cramped sleep. She woke to the trapdoor opening. Light flooded in, blinding her. Taza's face was above her. He reached down a hand. She took it. He pulled her up, his strength effortless. The house was a wreck. Abigail was sitting in the corner, weeping silently. "Where are they?" Eliza May whispered. "Looking for you," he said. He had a small, grim smile. They are looking in the wrong place. What did you do? I left a trail. He pulled a strip of dried meat from his belt and ate it. He was hungry, she realized. He was always hungry. He told her, while Harlan and his men were destroying her wagon. Taza was not just watching. He had circled around. He had found their horses tied in a hollow. He took Harlan's horse, and he took the mule from her shed. He had ridden Harlan's horse hard, south toward the Mexican border, making a clear trail. Then he tethered the mule, with Eliza May's saddle on it, in a canyon 5 miles away, and left more tracks. Then he had cut back, on foot, running through the rocks where no horse could follow. They are chasing a ghost, he said. Harlan is on foot, furious, and Brody and his men are following your mule. They will be gone all day. Eliza May stared at him. It was brilliant. It was simple. He had used their own arrogance against them. He had anticipated every move. But they will come back, she said. Yes, tonight or tomorrow, and they will be angry. He was right. This was not a victory. It was just a delay. He looked at the wreckage of her home. He looked at her mother, a broken woman in the corner. He looked at Eliza May. She was covered in dirt from the cellar. She was exhausted, but her eyes were not broken. They were clear. They were angry. He took her arm. Come, your mother will be safe here. They think she is alone. They do not want her. They want you. He led her outside, into the blinding afternoon sun. He led her to the canyon, to the place of the rocks. He had a small camp, if you could call it that, a blanket, a water skin, a small bag of nuts and dried meat. It was the camp of a man who owned nothing but himself. He gave her water. She drank. The exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. She sat down hard on the flat rock where he had washed his arm. They will be back tonight, she said, her voice numb. They will burn the house, with my mother in it. No. He sat near her, but not too near. They think you are their only problem. They will wait for you to come back. They will watch. What do we do? That we came out before she could stop it. He looked at her. For the first time, he let his own exhaustion show. His face was gaunt. He told her there was a place, a line shack Crow uses, north, near the grazing land he burned. It is where Harlan and his men stay. It is where they keep their powder. He was planning to counterattack. Eliza May looked at this man, this savage, as her mother called him. He was smarter than Brody, smarter than Harlan. He was fighting a war with nothing but his wits and his knowledge of the land. She was so tired. The sun was going down. The sky was turning a brilliant, painful purple and orange. She was hiding in a canyon, a fugitive on her own land. Why? She asked, her voice quiet. Why are you doing this? This is not your fight. You could be halfway to Mexico. Taza did not look at her. He looked at the sky. He was quiet for a long time. He told her this was his land, not her piece, but all of it. He said he was born in the mountains she could see from here, the Chiricahuas. He said his people had hunted here for 1,000 years. He told her about his family. He did not say they were dead. He said they were gone. He told her about his younger sister. She was 10. She liked to chase lizards. He said soldiers came, but they were not just soldiers. He said there was a white man with them, in a fine black coat, who was not a soldier. A man who pointed. He said the man pointed to the small spring where his family camped. He said the man wanted the water. He said he ran. He was a boy, 13. He ran, and he hid in the rocks. And he watched the soldiers take his sister. He watched them take his mother. He watched the man in the black coat, Silas Crow, walk through his camp, and he watched him find the spring. He said he had been watching Silas Crow ever since. He had watched him grow rich on water that was not his. He had watched him drive out the Jenkins and the Millers, and now, her. He told her he did not burn the grazing land just for the Jenkins family. He burned it because it was his land, and Crow's cattle were trespassers. Eliza May listened. She listened to the quiet, devastating pain in his voice. She understood. This was not about her. This was not about him. This was about a shared enemy, a shared loss that went deeper than land. It was a fight for memory. She looked at him, really looked at him. In the fading light, he was not a savage. He was a man who had lost everything, just like her. She told him about her father. She told him how her father had believed in this land, how he had dug the well, his hands raw and bleeding, promising her and her mother that this dirt would be their future. She told Taza how he had gone into the mountains for copper, not for greed, but to get money to buy more seeds, how he had never come back. She told him this land was all she had left of him. It was a gravestone. It was a promise. She could not run. They sat in the twilight, the first stars appearing, two people from different worlds, bound by a common grief. The air grew cold. Eliza May shivered. Taza stood. He retrieved his blanket. It was worn, but clean. He unfolded it. He did not hand it to her. He walked over and, without a word, draped it over her shoulders. His hands brushed her neck. The touch was accidental, but it sent a jolt through her, a warmth that had nothing to do with the wool. She looked up at him. His face was very close. She could see the lines of exhaustion around his eyes. He was not looking at her with pity or with desire. It was something else. It was recognition. He saw her, the real her, the one hiding behind the anger and the rifle. And she saw him. She did not go back to the house. She could not face her mother, or the ruined kitchen. She pulled the blanket tight. She leaned her head back against the sandstone rock. Taza sat a few feet away, his back to the canyon wall. He pulled his knife and began to sharpen it on a flat stone. The shing, shing, shing of the blade on the stone was the only sound. It was a watchful sound, a protective sound. Eliza May closed her eyes, under a vast, cold spray of stars, with an Apache warrior sharpening his knife nearby. She felt, for the first time in months, completely safe. She slept. Eliza May woke with a start, the cold of the high desert dawn seeping into her bones. For a disorienting second, she did not know where she was. She was not in her bed. She was in a canyon, wrapped in a strange blanket, and the air smelled of wood smoke and dust. Then it all came back in a painful rush. The bank, the sheriff, the broken wagon, the kerosene. She sat up. The wool blanket, Taza's blanket, fell into her lap. She had slept. She could not remember the last time she had slept so deeply, a heavy, exhausted sleep free of dreams. The sound that had woken her was the scrape of Taza's knife on the stone. He was still there, a few yards away, just as she had last seen him. He had not slept. His eyes were fixed on the mouth of the canyon, watching the sun begin to light the eastern ridges. "They will be back," she said. Her voice was a dry rasp. Taza nodded, not looking at her. "They are back. I saw their dust 2 hours ago. They're at your house, watching." A jolt of panic seized her. "My mother, I have to go to my mother." She started to stand, but Taza's voice stopped her. It was not loud, but it had the weight of command. "She is safe. They think she is a broken woman, alone. They will not harm her. She is the bait. You are the target." He was right. She knew he was right. Going back to the house would be walking straight into Brody's irons. Her independence, her need to do something, was a liability. She sank back down, hugging her knees, her internal conflict churning. She was a fighter, but she was trapped. "I cannot just sit here. The auction is in 2 days." "No," Taza said. He stood, sheathing his knife. He was all lean muscle and coiled energy, a man made of sinew and shadow. He walked to his small cache and pulled out a strip of dried venison. He tossed it to her. "We do not sit, we fight." Eliza May looked at the meat. She was starving. "How? They have the law. They have the guns. They have the numbers. We have this. She gestured to the canyon, to the single rifle she had left at the house, to the two of them. "You think like they do," he said, his voice quiet, almost patient. "You think about fences and paper and men in a line. That is how they build their cage. You cannot break their cage by running into the bars. You must walk out when they are not looking." I do not understand what that means. It means we do not fight Brody. We do not fight Harlan. We fight their strength. Crow's strength is his supplies, his men, his horses, the powder he keeps at the line shack, the hay he stole from the Jenkins ranch. We take those. We pull the legs from his table. Then he falls. Eliza May watched him. He was teaching her. He was teaching her a new way to see the world, a new way to fight. It was not about defense. It was not about standing on her porch with a rifle. It was about striking back. This went against every civilized instinct she had, every lesson her father had taught her about building, not breaking. "You want me to become like you," she whispered, her conflict written plain on her face. "A raider, a ghost." Taza's dark eyes met hers. There was no anger in them, only a deep, profound sadness. "They made me a ghost. They are trying to make you one, too. I am just teaching you how to survive it, to have freedom." He was right. She was already a fugitive, hiding on her own land. She had to choose. She could wait for Brody to find her, or she could fight on Taza's terms. She ate the dried meat, the salty, smoky flavor a shock to her system. It tasted like survival. "I have to know what is happening in town," she said, her voice firming. "I need to see Nellie Boone. She is my only friend." Taza considered this. "The town is dangerous for you, more dangerous than the desert." "I know, but I have to know what Brody is planning. I have to know if the auction is still—" She trailed off. The auction seemed like a child's game now. "Then we go," he said, "at dusk, not before." The day was the longest of her life. She was torn between her warring impulses. Her fierce independence screamed at her to go back to the house, to confront Brody, to fight for her mother. But the new, colder logic, Taza's logic, told her to wait, to be patient, to become a shadow. She was struggling to accept his help, to admit that her way had failed. She had kept the farm, yes, but she was about to lose it. Her strength alone was not enough. As the sun began to paint the sky in shades of blood, orange, and violet, they moved. Taza led the way. He did not walk. He flowed. He moved from shadow to shadow, his feet making no sound on the gravel and rock. Eliza May, in her heavy boots, felt like a cow crashing through a thicket. He stopped, his hand shooting back to halt her. He pointed. On a ridge overlooking her house, a quarter-mile away, she saw the glint of the setting sun on a rifle barrel. One of Brody's deputies. They were watching, waiting for her to return to her mother. Taza had been right. He led her in a wide circle, down through the dry wash, using the crumbling banks as cover. Until they were well clear of the farm, they walked for miles. The lights of Dusty Ford appeared, a small, hopeful cluster of yellow in the vast purple darkness. The town was not hopeful. As they approached, they could hear noise, not the usual Friday night revelry. This was an ugly sound, a crowd. Taza motioned her into the deep shadow of the alleyway behind the mercantile. "I will wait," he whispered. His form blended into the darkness so completely, he was gone. Eliza May slipped through the familiar shadows, her heart pounding. She tapped on Nellie Boone's back door. The door was snatched open. Nellie, her round face pale with terror, pulled Eliza May inside and bolted it. "Are you insane?" Nellie hissed, not in anger, but in pure fear. "They are looking for you. They are hunting you." "What is happening? Nellie, what is that noise?" "It is Brody and Harlan." Nellie wrung her hands. "They came back this morning, empty-handed and furious. Harlan had to walk 10 miles. He is telling everyone you and a whole war party of Apache ambushed him. Brody is in the saloon. He is organizing a posse. He says he is deputizing every man in town to deal with the Apache threat. Eliza May's blood ran cold. They mean Taza. They mean you, Eliza May. Nellie's eyes were filled with tears. It is not just about the land now. It is about you and him. People are scared, and Crow is fanning the flames. He is telling people you are a danger, that you have turned your back on your own kind. Nellie grabbed her arm. Mr. Henderson, he took your mother's credit. He said he cannot sell to an Indian lover. He said it was bad for business. The word struck Eliza May like a physical blow. The women from the sewing circle. Nellie rushed on. The ones who used to praise your needlework. They saw me. They crossed the street to avoid me, just for being your friend. Nellie's voice dropped. They have a name for you, Eliza May. Harlan was shouting it in the saloon. He is calling you Crow's Apache woman. Eliza May felt the room tilt. It was not the threat of prison. It was not the loss of the farm. It was this, the shame, the absolute bottomless humiliation. The town, her town, the people she had known all her life, had cast her out. They had branded her. The auction is in 2 days, Nellie whispered. But it does not matter. Brody is not going to let you get to the auction. He is going to use this posse. He is going to hunt you down. You have to go. Arthur and I, we will get your mother. We will put her on the stage. But you have to run. Eliza May stood frozen. Run where? She was an outcast. There was no place for her. She left Nellie's house, her mind numb. She found Taza in the alley, a deeper shadow in the darkness. He did not have to ask. He had heard the ugly roar from the saloon. He had heard Nellie's terrified, urgent whispers. Eliza May leaned against the cold adobe wall of the alley, the jeers and laughter from the saloon washing over her. They are calling me your woman, she whispered. She said it with all the ingrained bitterness and shame that her world had taught her. It was an accusation. Taza was silent for a long time. The moonlight caught the sharp planes of his face. He was not angry. He was not surprised. And what do you call yourself? He asked, his voice very quiet. She had no answer. I am Eliza May Carter. I am a landowner. Those are just words. Their words. He stepped closer. They hate you. They hated you before you ever saw me. They hated you because you were a woman alone and you would not bend. They hated you because you had water they wanted. Now they hate you because you fight back. And they hate you because you are with me. He was close enough now that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Their words are a cage. Eliza May, they put you in it. Crazy woman. Apache lover. Fugitive. You are letting them lock the door. He looked at her, his dark eyes searching her face. You are the freest person I have ever known. You stood up to Crow. You fired on his men. You are not afraid of them, but you are afraid of their names for you. Why? Does their talk break your bones? Does it stop the sun? Eliza May looked at the ground, the shame still hot in her. He gently touched his fingers to her chest, to the spot where she had hidden the antler ring. This is who you are, the one who fights. I am Apache. They will always hate me. It is their nature. But you, they hate you because you choose not to be one of them. You choose to be free. Is that so bad? To be free? His words cut through the shame. He was teaching her. This was the freedom he spoke of. It was not about land. It was not about running. It was about being unbound by the small, hateful prejudices of others. It was about standing in the world and choosing who you were and who you stood with. She looked up at him. She looked at the man who had saved her from a snake, who had given her his blanket, who had guarded her while she slept. And she looked at the saloon, where the men who called her neighbor were getting drunk and forming a posse to hunt her. The choice was so simple, it was agonizing. No, she said, her voice clear and strong. It is not bad. I am not afraid of their names. Her internal battle was over. The struggle between her stubborn, lonely independence and the need to accept this man's help was resolved. It was not surrender. It was an alliance. It was a partnership, forged in the fire of a shared enemy. "I am not afraid to be seen with you," she said, meeting his gaze. "I am only afraid of what happens if we lose. I am afraid for my mother." A rare, thin smile touched Taza's lips. "Good. Then we do not lose. Now we fight." The air between them had changed. It was no longer the desperate, hesitant alliance of two victims. It was the sharp, focused energy of two predators. "Brody has his posse," she said, her mind suddenly clear, working with his. "They will ride at dawn." "They will ride to your farm," Taza said. "They will not find us." "We cannot just run. My mother—" "No," Taza agreed. "We do not run. We give them a new trail to follow, a hotter trail." He told her his plan, the line shack, the powder, but it was not enough. They needed a diversion, a big one. Eliza May's mind, now honed by his logic, saw the answer. Crow. He is moving the cattle he took from the Jenkins family. He is moving them to the north pasture near his main ranch. He has hay stored there, a winter's worth, bales and bales, stacked by the creek. Taza understood instantly. If that hay burns Harlan, Crow, every man he has will ride there. It is his money. It is his future. "It will pull them all away from the farm," Eliza May said, her voice dropping. "It will pull them away from Brody." They looked at each other. This was a terrible step. She was no longer just defending her land. She was proposing to set a fire. She was adopting his methods. She thought of the kerosene on her own land. She thought of Harlan's men smashing her father's wagon. She thought of Nellie's face, pale with fear. She thought of the name they had given her. "My mother," she said, her last reservation. "She is at the house." "They will ride to the fire," Taza said, his voice certain. "It is everything to him. A lone woman in a house is nothing. A burning ranch is war. They will leave her. They will ride. And while they are gone, we will be at the line shack." Eliza May finished. She had made her choice. She had crossed the line. Taza pulled 2 dark bundles of cloth from his belt. "To cover your hair," he said. He dipped his fingers in the alley's clean dust and held them out. "To darken your face." Eliza May did not hesitate. She took the dust and smeared it on her cheeks, on her forehead. She bound her dark honey hair in the cloth. She looked at her faint reflection in the dark glass of the mercantile window. A stranger looked back. It was not Eliza May Carter, the farmer. It was not Crow's Apache woman. It was a shadow. A warrior. "Ready? We go," Taza whispered, and together they dissolved into the night. The alley was a tomb of shadow, the only sound the faint trickle of wastewater in a wooden trough. Behind them, in the saloon, the roar of the forming posse was a monstrous, drunken wave of sound. It was the sound of righteous men, fueled by Silas Crow's whiskey and their own fear, eager to hunt something, to hunt her. Eliza May Carter stood with her face darkened, her hair bound. The woman who had hoed corn and haggled with Elias Henderson was gone. In her place was this new creature, shaped by Taza's quiet, unyielding logic, a shadow. Taza touched her arm. Now. They did not run, they moved. Taza first, a ghost in the narrow spaces between buildings. He led her past the livery, past the dark, silent assayer's office where Nellie and Arthur were probably hiding behind their curtains, praying. He led her to the edge of town, where the last building gave way to the vast, moon-washed emptiness of the desert. He set a hard pace, moving north, not west, toward her farm, north, toward the heart of Silas Crow's empire. Every step was an agony of conflict for Eliza May. Her mother was back at the farm, alone. Brody and his new drunk deputies would ride there at dawn. They would find Abigail, They would find her daughter gone. What would they do? The fear for her mother was a physical sickness, a cold knot in her stomach. She had to fight the urge to turn, to run back, to stand on her porch with her rifle and make her final, hopeless stand. "He will not harm her." Taza's voice came from the darkness ahead. He had not looked back, but he knew. He felt her hesitation. "Your mother is the trap. They will not hurt the trap. They will sit. They will wait for you. We will not make them wait long." He was right. Her old way, the way of stubborn defense, was finished. It was a failure. It had led to a broken wagon, a cowering mother, and a posse at her heels. Her new way, Taza's way, was to move, to attack. They walked for hours. The moon climbed high, casting the world in silver and black. Eliza May's boots, so practical for farming, were loud and clumsy on the rock. Taza, in his worn moccasins, was silent. He was teaching her, with every step, how to place her feet, how to use the shadows, how to read the small sounds of the night. Her muscles, strong from farm work, ached with this new, predatory tension. They reached a high ridge. From here, the valley was a map of their enemy's power. Far to the south, she could just make out the dark smudge that was her own small farm. To the north, a mile away, was the C-Bar headquarters, a formidable collection of buildings, corrals, and bunkhouses, all dark save for a few lights, and further north still. In the wide pasture her father had once coveted was a dark, massive shape. "The hay," Eliza May whispered, her throat dry. "His winter," Taza said, "his blood, stolen from the Jenkins." He pointed in another direction, west of the headquarters, toward a dark cleft in the hills. "The line shack, where Harlan and his men keep their powder. Crow does not keep it at his house. He is too smart." They sat, hidden in a cluster of manzanita. Taza gave her the water skin. She drank. The water was cool, and it tasted of the earth. He was looking at her, his face impossible to read in the moonlight. "We must separate," he said, his voice flat. Eliza May's heart stopped. She had not planned for this. "No, I am going with you." "No." His voice was absolute. "They know you at the main ranch. They do not know me. They know me at the line shack. They do not know you. I will go to the line shack. You will go to the hay." He was trusting her. He was giving her the most important part. The diversion. The fire that would pull every man, every gun, away from her mother, away from the farm. I do not know if I can," she stammered. It was one thing to plan it in an alley. It was another to be here, to look at the massive, sleeping ranch. I am not a—" "You are a fighter," he said. "You shot the wagon. You faced the sheriff. This is the same, just a different target." He held out his hand. In it was a small, cloth-wrapped packet. Flint, steel, dry tinder. She took it. It felt heavy as a cannonball. "There are 2 guards. I saw them, by the creek, by their own fire. They are lazy. You will circle, wide, come from the creek bed. They will not see you. The wind is from the north. It will hide your sound. You will light the downwind side. The wind will do the rest." He was giving her a plan. He trusted her to follow it. And then he was standing. He was ready to go. A sudden, sharp terror seized Eliza May. It was not fear of the fire. It was not fear of the guards. It was a new, hollow fear. He was about to walk away. He was going to the line shack, to Harlan's den, alone. Harlan, who wanted him dead. She looked at this man, his form dark against the stars. In the last few days, he had become the only solid thing in her world. Her mother had collapsed. Nellie was afraid. The town had turned on her. Only Taza had stood with her, had taught her, had protected her. He had given her back her own strength, forged into a new, harder shape. She realized, with the force of a physical blow, that she could not live without him. It was not love as she had read about in her mother's worn books. It was not a soft, sighing thing. It was this agonizing, terrifying, vital need. It was the realization that if he walked into the darkness and did not come back, the farm did not matter, the money did not matter. Nothing mattered. She could not go back to being the person she was before. "Taza," she whispered, her voice choked. He stopped. She stood up. "They will be looking for you. Harlan, he will be... I will be quiet. Be safe." The words were useless, small stones against a mountain. She took a step toward him. Her hand went to her chest, to the antler ring hidden beneath her shirt. She had an impulse to show him, to tell him that she finally understood what it meant, that it was not a chain, not a debt, it was a choice. Her choice. Instead, her hand went from her chest and she touched his forearm. His skin was warm, his muscles hard as cured wood. "I will not fail. I will make a fire they can see from the moon." His dark eyes held hers. He saw the shift. He saw the terror. But he also saw the new, unbreakable resolve. He saw that she was not fighting for her land anymore. She was fighting for him, for them. He gave a single, tight nod. "The fire is the signal. When I see the sky turn red, I will move on the line, Shack. Do not be there when they see it." He put his hand over hers. Just for a second, a brief, hard pressure. "You're the one who fights. Fight now." And he was gone. He did not walk. He dissolved into the landscape, a shadow moving toward the western hills. Eliza May was alone. She was truly alone. She took a deep breath, the cold desert air burning her lungs. She looked at the packet in her hand. She turned north and began to crawl. It was slow work. She used the creek bed, just as he had said. The water was a muddy trickle, but the banks were high, shielding her from sight. She could hear the C-Bar ranch stirring. A dog barked. A man coughed. She froze, her heart hammering, but no alarm was raised. She moved past the main ranch, a fortress of adobe and thick lumber. She saw the corrals, filled with hundreds of cattle. She saw the fine house Silas Crow had built, with glass windows that glowed faintly. She reached the north pasture, and she saw the hay. It was a mountain. It was taller than her house, longer than the main street of Dusty Ford. It was a king's ransom in Winterfeed. And just as Taza had said, 2 men sat by a small fire near the creek. Their rifles leaned against a log. They were talking, their voices a low murmur. She did not hesitate. She did not think about the waste. She thought of the kerosene. She thought of her father's broken wagon. She crawled through the mud of the creek bank until she was on the far side of the haystack, the north side. The wind was at her back, blowing toward the stack. The guards were upwind. They would smell nothing. She opened the packet. Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold the flint. She dropped it. It clicked against a stone. She froze. The voices from the campfire did not change. She picked it up. "Fight now." Taza's voice. She pulled a handful of the tinder, dry as paper. She knelt in the mud, hidden by the bank, and struck the steel against the flint. Once, a weak spark. Twice, nothing. Her hands were slick with sweat and mud. She closed her eyes. She thought of Taza, waiting, watching the sky. She thought of her mother, alone, waiting for Brody. She took a slow, deep breath, just as Taza had taught her to breathe when she held the rifle. She opened her eyes. She struck the steel. A bright, hot spark landed on the tinder. It smoldered. She blew on it, gently. A tiny, brave flame licked up. She grabbed the burning tinder and shoved it deep into the base of the nearest bale. It was dry as dust. It did not catch. It smoked. "Damn you!" she whispered. She pulled it out, blew on it again, and shoved it into a different spot, where the baling wire had loosened, where the hay was airy. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a wisp of smoke. A small, orange eye opened in the dark. A flame licked up, tasted the dry grass, and grew. It caught another strand, and another. With a sudden, soft whoosh that she felt more than heard, the entire side of the bale ignited. The two guards smelled it at the same instant. "What in the hell is that? Smells like smoke." Eliza May did not wait. She scrambled back, sliding down the bank into the creek, crouching low in the muddy water. "Fire!" one of the men screamed. The stack is on fire!" She heard them run. She heard them shouting, but it was too late. The wind hit the new flames and fanned them with a roar. The fire did not climb. It exploded. It shot up the side of the stack, a solid wall of roaring, orange flame. In seconds, the entire mountain of hay was an inferno, lighting the valley as bright as day. Alarms. Bells clanged from the main ranch. Men were shouting. Doors slammed. Eliza May ran. She stayed in the creek bed, her boots sucking in the mud. She ran south, back the way she had come, her heart pounding with a wild, terrifying exhilaration. She had done it. She heard horses, a swarm of them. She looked back. A dozen riders, maybe more, were pouring out of the C-Bar headquarters, riding hard for the fire. It was Crow. It was every man he had. Her diversion had worked. She was half a mile away when she heard it. It was not a roar. It was a crack, a deep, ground-shaking boom that echoed off the mountains. It was louder than any thunder, deeper than any gunshot. It came from the west, from the line shack. "Taza." She stopped, leaning against the bank, gulping for air. She smiled. It was a fierce, grim smile in the mud and the dark. They had done it. She looked toward her farm. She could see a cluster of new lights there. The posse. Brody had arrived, but as she watched, the lights moved. They were confused. The massive fire to the north, the explosion to the west. They were riders, not soldiers. They were breaking apart, some riding toward the C-Bar fire, others just milling in confusion. She had done it. She had pulled all of Crow's men and all of Brody's away from her home. Her mother was safe. She climbed from the wash and ran, keeping to the rocks, making her way back to the high ridge, the rendezvous point. She was shaking, exhausted, soaked in mud. She waited. The fire lit the sky, a monstrous, beautiful beacon. The shouting was a faint echo. Had he made it? The explosion was huge. Had he gotten clear? She waited for an eternity. Then a stone clicked. She spun around. A shadow detached itself from a larger shadow. Taza. He was there. He was breathing hard. But he was unharmed. He was watching the chaos he had helped her create. The C-Bar was in turmoil. He turned to her. In the leaping, demonic light of the distant fire, he saw her. Her face was striped with mud and sweat. Her clothes were torn. Her eyes were wide and bright, a brilliant, feral green. "You have good fire," Taza said. His voice was rough with approval. She did not think. She did not plan. Her body moved on its own. She crossed the 3 feet between them and threw her arms around him, burying her face in the rough cotton of his shirt. It was not a plea. It was not a surrender. It was a declaration. It was an anchor. She held on, her knuckles white, as if he were the only solid thing left on earth. He was rigid for a full second. A man who lived by stealth, a man who had not been touched with kindness in a decade. His entire body was a weapon, and it was not built for this. Then, slowly, his arms came up. They did not just pat her back, they enclosed her. He held her, his grip as hard and sure as the rock under their feet. It was not a lover's embrace. It was the embrace of 2 soldiers who had just survived the impossible, together. She pulled back, but only a little. She looked up at his face. "We did it." "We did," he said. She finally understood. Love was not a chain. It was not a duty. It was not what her mother pined for. It was this choice, this standing in the fire with another person. this freedom to choose who you would fight for. She could not, would not, live without this man, because without him, she was not this person, this strong, free woman. He saw it in her eyes. He saw the change. He saw her, not as the farmer, not as the white woman, but as his partner. The fight was not over. Crow was still out there. Brody was still out there. But they stood on the ridge, two small figures against a burning sky. And for the first time, they were not just surviving. They were winning. The embrace on the ridge was a thing of stone and desperation. Eliza May Carter clung to Taza, her face buried in the rough, smoky cotton of his shirt, her knuckles white. She was holding onto the only sane thing in a world she had just set on fire. The inferno from the C-Bar haystack, a mile to the north, cast them in a leaping, hellish light. The sky was not dark, it was red. Taza, his hand, the one not holding her, was flat on her back, a gesture of impossible, solid reassurance. He, a man who had lived his life in shadows, was standing on a hilltop, lit like a performer on a stage. He broke the hold. His hands were firm on her shoulders. He did not push her away. He set her back. His face was grim, his eyes already scanning the valley. "We must move. The fire shows us to them." Eliza May nodded, wiping the mud and sweat from her face with her sleeve. The wild, victorious exhilaration was gone, replaced by a cold, metallic exhaustion. She was right. The fire, their victory, was also their betrayer. It turned the rocks around them into sharp, black silhouettes. It made the high ridge the most visible point for miles. She looked south, toward her farm, the lights of the posse. Brody, his men, were scattered, confused. Some were riding toward the C-Bar. Some were still at her house, milling in the yard. Then Taza stiffened. He didn't point. He simply moved, pulling her with him into the black shadow of a high boulder. He pointed, not south, east. "Riders, not the main group, 4 of them, coming fast, cutting between them and the dark safety of the mountains. They were not riding to the fire. They were riding to the explosion. They were riding for the line shack." And they had seen the 2 figures on the ridge, stark against the red sky. Eliza May. Her heart dropped. She recognized the lead rider, even from this distance. The set of his shoulders. The bulk. Harlan. He was not on foot. He had found another horse, and beside him, his badge glinting in the firelight, was Sheriff Brody. "They saw us." Her voice was a useless whisper. Taza grabbed her arm. "Not down the way we came. The other side. Toward the wash." They did not run. They scrambled, half sliding, half falling down the steep western slope of the ridge. The rocks were sharp. They tore at her hands, at her denim trousers. The Winchester rifle on her back was a heavy, awkward weight, catching on the brittle brush. A rifle cracked from below. The sound was flat, ugly. A bullet sang past her ear. So close she felt its hot wind. It struck the rock just ahead of her, sending stone chips stinging into her face. Harlan, his voice was a bellow of pure, animal triumph. "There they are, up the rocks. Get the woman. The Apache is mine." They were trapped. Harlan and Brody were at the bottom, dismounting, starting to climb. 2 other men, deputies, were circling, trying to cut off any escape. Taza pulled her behind a high slab of sandstone. They were pinned. He looked around, his eyes quick, desperate. The ridge was a dead end. Below them was a sheer drop, maybe 20, 30 feet, into a black, rocky wash. It was their only way. He pushed her toward the ledge. "Go! Drop! Land in the sand!" "I will not leave you." She said it like a vow. It was the only clear thought in her head. "This is not a choice, Eliza May." His voice was hard, a sound she had not heard before. It was the voice of a man seeing the end. He said, "They want you. They want me. One of us can live. Go!" He was pushing her, forcing her to the edge. Another shot. this one from above. One of Harlan his men had circled, flanking them. The bullet hit the ground at Taza his feet. He roared. It was not a word. It was the cry of a cornered animal, a sound of grief and ancient fury. He turned away from her, away from safety. He stood in the full, flickering light of the fire and drew his knife. He was making himself the target. He was buying her seconds. "Run, Eliza May!" He shouted it. "Run!" He threw himself sideways, toward the man above, scrambling up the rocks, leading them away from her, away from the one escape route. A volley of gunfire answered him. Not one shot, 3, all at once from Harlan and Brody and the man above. Taza, his cry was different. It was not a roar. It was a sharp, surprised grunt of pain. He stumbled. His hand went to his side. He fell, tumbling back down the short slope, his body sliding over the gravel. He landed hard behind a small outcrop of rock. Halfway between her and Harlan, he was still... "No!" The word was a silent scream in her throat. Harlan laughed. A terrible, victorious sound from below. "I hit him. I hit the bastard. He is down." Eliza May watched, frozen, from the shadow of the ledge. She saw Harlan and Brody start to climb, moving rock to rock, their rifles ready. They were taking their time. They were enjoying this. They were walking up to finish him. This was the moment. She was at the edge. She could drop. She could disappear into the wash. She could run, just as he had told her. She could save herself. She looked at the still form behind the rock. Taza, the man who had saved her from the snake. The man who had given her his blanket. The man who had guarded her while she slept. The man who had just taken a bullet that was meant for her. She thought of her father as words. Never shoot at a man unless you mean to kill him. It is a weight you cannot carry. She looked at Harlan, his thick back exposed as he climbed. He was a murderer. He had come to her house with kerosene. He had smashed her wagon. She slid the Winchester from her shoulder. Her hands were not shaking. They were perfectly, unnaturally still. The world narrowed. The roaring fire, the shouting, her own sobbing breath. It all went silent. There was only the rifle. Her father, his rifle, and the man climbing toward Taza. It is a weight I will carry, she thought it, and the thought was as solid as the rock beneath her. She rested the long barrel in a V of the rock. Harlan was 60 yards away. An easy shot. He stopped, raising his own rifle to fire a final, careful shot into the unmoving shape of Taza. Eliza May breathed out, slow. She did not aim for his back. She did not aim for his head. Her father, his other voice was there. Shoot at what he needs. She aimed for the rifle in his hands, or the arm that held it. She squeezed the trigger. The explosion of the Winchester was deafening in the small space. It kicked her shoulder, hard, but she held it steady. Harlan screamed. It was a high, thin sound, a sound of pure agony and disbelief. His rifle flew from his hands, clattering down the rocks. He stumbled back, clutching his right arm. It was a shattered, useless thing. He was out. He was done. The other man, Sheriff Brody, froze. He looked at Harlan, then up at her. He could not see her. She was a shadow with a rifle. He fired 1, 2 shots wildly at her position. Then he turned and scrambled back down the rocks, dragging his wounded foreman with him. "Get him out!" Brody was yelling. "Get him out!" The silence that fell was as loud as the gunshot. Eliza May did not wait. She did not think. She flew from her hiding place. She ran, sliding down the gravel, not to the safety of the wash, but to Taza. He was on his side. His eyes were open. They were glazed with pain. There was a dark, spreading stain high on his ribs, near his shoulder. "You came back." His voice was a bare thread of sound. "I do not run." She said it, her own voice shaking. She dropped the rifle and fumbled with the hem of her shirt, trying to rip a piece of cloth. He looked past her, at the rocks where Harlan had fallen. "You shot." "I shot," she said, His eyes closed for a moment. He was trying to breathe. He looked at her again. The pain was still there, but under it was something new. Something she had seen on the ridge. Awe. He had sacrificed himself for her. And she, this small, civilized woman, had just started a war and shot a man to save him. The truth of it settled on them both, simple and hard as the rock they were on. Love was not a soft word. It was not a promise. It was this. It was mutual protection. It was standing in the fire and choosing, again and again, to shield the other. It was Taza, taking the bullet. It was Eliza May, firing the answering shot. "We have to go." Her voice was urgent. She tore a long strip from her petticoat. She pressed it, hard, against the wound. He hissed, his back arching. The bullet, she saw, had gone in. She did not know if it had come out. "Up," she said. She put her shoulder under his good arm. "Up." He tried. His teeth gritted. He was strong, but the blood loss was making him weak. He leaned on her, his full weight a crushing load. She staggered, but she held him. "To the wash," he gasped. "It is the only way." Together, they moved to the ledge. It was a 20-foot drop into blackness. "There is no other way," she said. He nodded. He looked at her. "Trust me." He grabbed her, pulling her tight against his good side. He turned, put his back to the drop, and just fell. Eliza May screamed, a short, sharp cry as the ground vanished from under her. They fell, locked together. They hit the bottom in a jarring crash of soft sand and hard rock. She landed half under him. The air knocked from her lungs. For a moment, she saw stars. Then she heard him groan. They were alive. They were at the bottom of the wash. They were hidden by the high, sheer walls. Above them, they heard Brody, his voice, faint, panicked. "He is gone. They are both gone. They vanished." Eliza May pushed herself out from under Taza. He was conscious, but his face was slick with sweat. The bleeding from his side was worse. She held the cloth to the wound. He was shivering. They were safe from the guns, but they were far from safe. They were in a dark wash, miles from home, with a wounded man, a posse hunting them, and Silas Crow, his rage just beginning. She looked at Taza, his face, pale in the moonlight. He looked at her. They had saved each other. Now, she had to save him again. The blackness of the wash was a cold, temporary grave. Eliza May Carter landed with a bone-jarring thud, Taza's dead weight crushing the air from her lungs. For a single, terrifying second, the world was just pain and the ringing in her ears. Above them, on the ridge, she heard the faint, panicked shouts of Sheriff Brody and his men. They were gone, vanished. Then, Taza groaned. It was a low, pain sound that cut through her daze. She pushed herself out from under him. He was on his back, his face a pale, sweat-slick mask in the moonlight. The rag she had pressed to his side was a black, sodden mass. The bleeding was bad. "Taza!" Her voice was a raw whisper. She fumbled, ripping another long strip from her petticoat, her hands shaking. "Taza, stay with me." His eyes flickered open. He looked at her. "Trust," he gasped. She pressed the new bandage to the wound. He arched off the ground, a silent scream of agony. "We have to move. They will come down here." "No," he whispered. His breath was shallow. "They will not now. They are afraid." He was right. Brody and Harlan were cowards. They would go back to the sea bar, to their master, to report their failure. But the master... The northern sky was a pulsing, monstrous red. The hayfire was a beacon, drawing all the anger in the valley to it. Silas Crow was there. He was smart. He was not Harlan. He would not be fooled for long. He would see the fire. He would hear of the explosion, and he would know it was a coordinated attack. He would know it was her. "We have to go." Eliza May tried to pull him up, but he was too weak. His strength was pouring into the sand. No! Taza, his hand, slick with his own blood, grabbed her arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. Go! I will not. The words were a vow, torn from her. I will not leave you. You must. His eyes were desperate, urgent, trying to make her understand. The fire, the explosion, it is just noise. It is a diversion, not the victory. What are you saying? His power, Taza fought for breath. Not his guns, not his men, his paper, the ledgers, his deals. He was rambling, she thought, his mind going. She pressed the bandage. Hard. No, he insisted. Listen, he told me Harlan. He was drunk, in the saloon. He bragged. Crow he keeps his real strength not in the house, in the storm cellar, under the bunkhouse. Ledgers, deeds, the notes he holds, the proof of all his thefts. Eliza May stared at him. A battle of wits. Taza was giving her the final piece of the puzzle. You must go, he whispered. Go to your friend, the woman, Nellie. Tell her husband, the paperman, Arthur Boone. Tell him the ledgers, under the bunkhouse. He will know. He will understand. Leave you here to die. She was weeping now, her tears cutting clean tracks in the soot and mud on her face. If you stay, Taza said, his voice fading, we both die. And he wins. If you go, we have a chance. Go. It was the hardest choice of her life, to leave him, to run. But he was right. She had come this far. She had set the fire. She had shot Harlan. She could not stop. She pulled his body into the deepest part of the shadow, behind a tumble of rocks. She packed the wound as tight as she could. She gave him the water skin. I will come back. She said it not to him, but to herself. I will come back for you. His eyes were closed. She did not know if he heard her. She kissed his forehead, a desperate, terrified, soot-stained kiss. Then she ran. She ran, staying in the wash, her boots filling with sand. She ran until her lungs were fire and her legs were water. She ran south, toward the farm, toward the only hope she had. She bypassed her own land. She saw the lights of the posse, still in confusion. She did not stop. She ran the last 2 miles to Dusty Ford on the open road, a wild, spectral figure in the moonlight. She did not knock on Nellie Boone's door. She fell against it. It was opened instantly. Arthur Boone, the quiet assayer, stood there, a shotgun in his hands. Nellie was behind him, her face white. Merciful heaven, Nellie breathed. Eliza May stumbled inside. Taza, he is hurt, hiding in the wash, north of the ridge. He is bad. Nellie ran for bandages, for brandy. No, Eliza May grabbed Arthur's arm. Her voice was a croak. You have to listen. Taza said he said the ledgers, Silas Crow, his real power, under the bunkhouse, in the cellar, the deeds, the proof. Arthur Boone's quiet, scholarly face changed. He looked at her, then at Nellie. He had seen Crow's transactions. He had suspected. He had seen the Jenkins deed filed. With a sale price of $1? Nellie, he said, his voice sharp. Stay here. Bolt the door. Where are you going? To get the banker. Mr. Harris. Eliza May's mind was catching up. The man from Tucson. He is at the hotel, Arthur said. He was waiting for the auction. He and his partners. They came to see the land. He pulled on his coat. He checked the shotgun. He saw the fire. Eliza May. He saw the explosion. He knows something is wrong. Now. He is going to learn what is wrong. Wait, Eliza May said, I am coming with you. You are a fugitive. It is my fight, she said. She would not hide, not anymore. They did not go to the C bar. They went to the hotel. They hammered on the door. Harris came down, in his nightshirt, a pistol in his hand. 2 other men, strangers in suits, were with him. What is the meaning of this? Arthur Boone spoke, his voice low and urgent. He told them everything. He told them about the kerosene, the broken wagon, the lynch mob posse, and now the ledgers. The men's faces hardened. This was not a foreclosure. This was a range war, started by the man who wanted to be their partner. "We are going to the Carter farm," Harris said, his voice cold. "To see Mrs. Carter." "No," Eliza May said. "He is not there. He is at the fire, or he is hunting." "Then we ride to the fire." Harris said, "We will settle this." They rode. Arthur, Eliza May, the banker, and his two grim-faced partners. They rode north. They found him not at the fire. The fire was chaos, men shouting, a lost cause. They found him on the ridge, near the wash. Silas Crow was not a fool. He had left the fire. He knew where the real fight was. He was on his horse, a shotgun across his lap, staring down into the dark wash where Taza was hidden. "Crow!" Harris called out, his voice sharp. Silas Crow turned his horse. He was calm. He was composed. He looked at the 5 riders, at the banker, at the men in suits, at Arthur Boone, and he looked at Eliza May, covered in blood and dirt, riding beside them. His smile was a thin, cold line. "Mr. Harris, you are just in time. I have cornered the Apache who burned my ranch, and his accomplice." He nodded at Eliza May. "It seems Miss Carter is a far more enterprising woman than we believed." Eliza May spurred her horse forward. "You are a liar. You are a murderer. You sent your men to burn my home." Crow laughed, a soft, terrible sound. "Proof. Miss Carter, a difficult thing. You are an arsonist, a fugitive. No one will believe a word you say." Arthur Boone rode forward. "I will. I saw your men's work on her wagon. Crow, I heard Brody form his lynch mob." Harris looked at Crow. His face was like granite. "You have been misleading. Mr. Crow, you told us this was a simple foreclosure." "A local matter," Crow said, his hand tightening on the shotgun. "Ask him," Eliza May cried, her voice ringing out in the night. "Ask him about the Jenkins family. Ask him what he paid for their land. Ask him about the ledgers he keeps under his bunkhouse." Crow's smile vanished. His face went white. "Ask him," a new voice said. A weak, rasping voice from the darkness of the wash. Eliza May's heart stopped. "Taza." He had pulled himself up. He was leaning against the wash wall, one hand pressed to his side, but he was standing. He was looking up at Silas Crow. "Ask him," Taza said again, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "About my sister. Ask him about the spring he stole, the day he came with the soldiers." Crow stared at the apparition. The Apache, the man he had been hunting for a decade, alive, and accusing him. "This is madness," Crow spat. "You will believe this savage over me." "I believe," Mr. Harris said, his voice like ice, "that my bank will be withdrawing its offer on this note, and we will be placing a full audit on every holding you have with us, starting tomorrow. Your methods are a liability." The word hung in the air. Liability. It was the end. Silas Crow's empire was built on credit, on the idea of his power. The bankers, his source, had just turned off the tap. He was ruined. He looked at Harris. He looked at Arthur. He looked at Taza, the dying man who had destroyed him. And he looked at Eliza May. Her face, streaked with his own blood, and her soot, was a mask of cold triumph. His composure, his civilized mask, shattered. It cracked apart, revealing the raw, ugly thing underneath. "If I am ruined," he hissed, his voice a venomous whisper, "you will not live to see it." He raised the shotgun. He aimed it straight at Eliza May. He was fast, but Eliza May was faster. She had not let go of her father's rifle. It was in her lap. She did not aim. She did not think. She reacted. She fired from the saddle. The shot was a deafening blast, echoing Taza's own shot from days before. The heavy ball struck the shotgun, not Crow. The barrels of his gun exploded, a flash of fire and splinters. Crow screamed. A high, unhuman sound. He dropped the ruined weapon, clutching his hands to his chest. His hands, they were a ruin. He stared at Eliza May, his face a mask of agony and pure, undiluted hatred. He wheeled his horse and galloped away, a broken, howling man, disappearing into the night toward the red glow of his burning, ruined empire. Eliza May did not watch him go. She was off her horse, sliding down the bank into the wash. She fell to her knees beside Taza. He was still standing, but only barely. He looked at her. "We won," she whispered, her hands hovering over his bloody side. "We won." He did not smile. He just looked at her, his dark eyes filled with a pride and a pain so deep it took her breath away. Then his eyes closed, and he pitched forward, collapsing into her arms. She caught him. She held his dead weight, her heart stopping. He was so still. Eliza May realized the victory was not the fire. It was not the ledgers. It was not even the banker's words. It was this moment. She had beaten Crow. She had saved her land, but she had lost. She had paid a price. The cost of freedom was this heavy, broken man in her arms. No. The determination, the same will that had made her light the fire, rose in her. She had fought Crow. Now she would fight this. She looked up at Arthur and the bankers, who were staring down, their faces pale. "Help me!" Her voice was not a plea. It was a command. "He is not dying. I will not let him. Get me to my house, now." Eliza May Carter's command cut through the cold, pre-dawn air. "Help me!" The men on the ridge, the bankers in their city suits, and the quiet assayer stared down at her. She was on her knees in the dirt of the wash, holding the unconscious, bleeding body of Taza. She was covered in his blood, her face a mask of soot and fury. Arthur Boone was the first to move. He scrambled down the bank, his shotgun forgotten. "Harris, give me a hand." The banker, Harris, and his two partners followed, their movements stiff and awkward. These were men of ledgers and backroom deals. This was not their world, but they had seen Silas Crow's mask shatter. They had seen this woman fire a rifle with the precision of a cavalry scout. They were afraid of her, and they respected her. It was a grim, terrible procession. They made a chair of their hands and lifted Taza, his head lolled, his body a dead weight. Eliza May walked beside them, one hand pressed hard on the makeshift bandage, her other hand holding her father's Winchester, her eyes scanning the rocks. The fight was over, but the war was not. They moved south, a small, strange army. The sky to the north was a dying, angry red. The fire at the sea bar was consuming itself. When they reached the small adobe house, the first gray light of dawn was staining the sky. The mule Eliza May had used for the false trail was back, standing dumbly by the broken fence. Taza had been right. Brody had followed the trail, found the mule, and returned, confused, just in time for the fire. The front door was open. Abigail Carter stood there. She had not slept. She had heard the posse, the fire, the distant explosion, the final gunshots. She was a woman hollowed out by terror. Then she saw them. She saw the rich men from the bank. She saw Arthur Boone, and she saw what they were carrying. The Apache. He was covered in blood, and her daughter, Eliza May, was walking beside him, looking like a savage herself, her eyes as cold and hard as the barrel of the rifle she carried. Abigail's hand went to her mouth. "No, oh, merciful God, no! Eliza May, what have you done? You have brought him here." "He is dying, Mama." Eliza May's voice was flat, devoid of all emotion except a terrifying, iron resolve. She walked past her mother, pushing through the door. "This room." She pointed not to the main room, but to her own small alcove, her bed, the one with her grandmother's quilt. "You cannot," Abigail whispered, horror-struck. "You cannot put that man in your bed. It is not decent. It is not right." Eliza May turned. She looked at her mother, at the bankers, at all of them. He is the only decent thing I have met in this entire valley. He saved my life. He saved this farm. He is not dying in the dirt. She looked at the men. Put him down, on the bed, gently. They did as they were told, laying Taza on the clean white sheets. The contrast of his dark, bloody form on her virgin bed was a shocking, final violation of all of Abigail's known world. "Nellie," Arthur Boone said, appearing at the door. He had run to get his wife. Nellie Boone rushed in, her arms full of clean bandages, a bottle of carbolic, and a small flask of whiskey. She took one look at the scene at Taza on the bed, at Eliza May's face, at Abigail's catatonic terror, and she became a general. "Arthur, Harris, all of you," Nellie said, her voice sharp. "Out! Go! Wait on the porch. Give her air." She pushed them out. "Abigail, boil water. All the water you have. Now!" Abigail, given a simple, concrete task, finally moved, a ghost drifting to the stove. Nellie turned to Eliza May. "The bullet, is it still in?" Eliza May nodded, her hands already working, cutting away the bloody remnants of Taza's shirt. "I think so. It is deep, in his side." The wound was a ragged, dark hole, oozing blood. He was so still. His breathing was a shallow, wet rattle. "He is dying," Eliza May whispered, the iron in her voice finally cracking. "Not while we are here," Nellie said, her voice fierce. She uncorked the whiskey. "This is for him. This is for you." She handed the bottle to Eliza May. "Take a drink." Eliza May did. The raw spirit burned her throat, cutting through the shock, steadying her hands. Nellie poured a measure of it onto a clean rag. "You have to," Nellie said, holding the rag. "You have the steadiest hands." Eliza May looked at her mother's sewing box. She took out the longest, sharpest needle. She held it, and her favorite paring knife, in the boiling water. Abigail saw the knife and let out a thin wail. "Hold him, Nellie," Eliza May said. "If he wakes." She took the whiskey-soaked rag and pressed it to Taza's mouth. She took the clean, hot knife. She took a deep breath, and she went to work. The next 3 days were a fever dream. Taza did not wake. He drifted in a dark, burning world. The bullet was out. Eliza May had retrieved it, a small, misshapen lump of lead. She had stitched the wound with fishing line, her movements precise, but the fever had taken hold. Eliza May did not leave his side. She sat in a chair by the bed, her father's rifle leaning against the wall. She cooled his forehead with damp rags. She forced water and broth between his cracked lips. She changed the bandages, her stomach churning at the smell of the infection, but her hands never faltered. Abigail watched from the doorway. She would not come in. She would not help. She would just stand there, her face a mask of grief and confusion, watching her daughter tend this Apache warrior with a desperate, tender intimacy that terrified her. Nellie Boone was her only anchor. She came every day. She brought food. She brought news. The valley was in chaos. Silas Crow had been found on the road to Dusty Ford, wandering, his hands shattered by the shotgun blast. He was under guard at the town doctor's office. Sheriff Brody, disgraced. His posse dissolved. Had been stripped of his badge by the territorial marshal, who had ridden in from Tucson with the bankers. Harlan, his arm amputated, was in the jail, along with 2 of the other deputies. Arthur Boone, protected by the bankers, had gone to the C-Bar headquarters. The place was deserted. The fire had been put out, but not before it had consumed a year's worth of profit. The cowhands had fled. Arthur had walked into the empty bunkhouse, found the storm cellar, and emerged with Crow's ledgers. It was all there, the proof, the fraudulent deeds, the extortion, the illegal land grabs, the payoffs to Brody. Silas Crow was not just ruined. He was finished. The town, Nellie said, did not know what to do. They had been freed from a tyrant, but they were not grateful to their savior. They were terrified of her. The story of the night was spoken in whispers. They talked about the fire. They talked about the explosion. They talked about how Eliza May Carter had shot Harlan, then faced down Silas Crow himself. They did not call her Crow's Apache woman anymore. They did not call her crazy. They called her nothing. They avoided her name. She had become a myth, a dark, violent force, and they were more afraid of her than they had ever been of Crow. And they knew the Apache was in her house, in her bed. This, more than the fire, more than the shooting, was the thing they could not understand. It was an affront to the world they knew. On the fourth day, Taza's fever broke. Eliza May was asleep in the chair, her head on her arms, exhausted. A sound woke her. Not a groan, a word. Water. Her head snapped up. Taza's eyes were open. They were not glazed. They were clear. He was looking at her. She fumbled with the cup, her hands shaking so hard she spilled. She held it to his lips. He drank, deeply. He looked around the small, clean room. He looked at the whitewashed walls, the quilt. He looked at her. "You came back," he whispered. His voice was a dry rasp. "I told you I would." Tears streamed down her face, the first she had shed since it all began. They were tears of relief, of a tension so profound she had not known it was there. "The others." "Crow is finished. Arrested. Brody. Harlan, they are all finished. We won. Taza, we won." He closed his eyes. He did not look victorious. He looked tired. "You won. You did this." "We did this," she corrected, her voice fierce. Mr. Harris, the banker, rode out that afternoon. He found Eliza May on the porch, scrubbing Taza's blood from the floorboards. She looked up, her face gaunt, her eyes shadowed, but the iron was still in her spine. He was deeply uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. He held out a sheaf of papers. "Miss Carter," he said, "the bank, my partners and I, we are deeply grateful. Your actions have exposed a level of corruption that was damaging to our interests." He did not meet her eyes. "In light of Mr. Crow's illegal and coercive actions, the bank has voted to nullify the foreclosure. This land is yours, free and clear. The original note, we consider it paid in full." He held out the paper. The deed, her father's deed, stamped, paid. She looked at it. She did not take it. "And," he rushed on, "we have opened a line of credit for you at the Mercantile, for seed, for lumber, to rebuild, whatever you need." She looked at this man, at the paper he held. This was it. This was the victory. This was what she had fought for. Her farm, her freedom. She took the deed. She looked at her hands, holding it. They were raw, her nails broken, the skin stained with blood and soot and carbolic. She had fought for this piece of paper. She had set fires. She had shot a man. She had dug a bullet out of another. She felt nothing, just tired. The fight was over, and she was alone. The town was afraid of her. Her mother was a stranger. "Thank you, Mr. Harris," she said, her voice hollow. He nodded, tipped his hat, and rode away, glad to be gone. She stood on the porch, the deed in her hand, the symbol of everything she had wanted. It meant nothing. She walked back inside. The house was silent. Abigail was in the kitchen, but she didn't speak. Eliza May went to her room. Taza was awake. He had been watching her. He saw the paper in her hand. "You are free," he said. She stood at the foot of her bed. "This paper says I am—" She looked at him, at his bandaged body, at the man who had come from nowhere and turned her world inside out. "The town, they are afraid of me. My mother, she does not know me. I have my land, but I have nothing." He was quiet for a long time, just watching her. His weakness was a mask over his strength. "You have yourself," he said, his voice quiet but gaining strength. "You have the woman who fights, the woman who does not run." "And what am I supposed to do with her?" Eliza May whispered, the fight finally leaving her. "I do not know who she is. I do not know how to just be." "I do," he said. He pushed himself up on one elbow, his teeth gritted against the pain. "You are the woman who saved my life. You are the woman who set me free." He looked around the small, simple room. "This house, this is not a cage. This is quiet." He looked at her, and his eyes were not the eyes of a warrior. They were the eyes of a man. "You showed me how to stand on a piece of ground and say mine. Now, you must let me show you how to live on it." Abigail appeared in the doorway. She was holding a tray. On it was a bowl of broth and a piece of clean bread. She looked at Taza. She looked at her daughter. She did not speak. She walked to the bed, set the tray down, and walked out. It was not forgiveness. It was not acceptance. It was a beginning. Eliza May sat on the edge of the bed. She picked up the spoon. The silence in the small house was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of peace. A hard, scarred, and fragile peace. And she looked at Taza. Her farm, her future. It was all a terrifying, open question. But as she looked at him, and he at her, she knew, for the first time in her life, she was not alone in it. This was the new beginning. It was not a grand victory. It was a quiet promise. In a small room, after a terrible war. And it was enough. The small adobe house was quiet, but it was a new kind of quiet. It was not the brittle, terrified silence of the days before the fire. It was the quiet of a wound beginning to heal, a quiet that was tender, sore, and still uncertain. Weeks had passed. The northern sky was no longer red. The whispers from Dusty Ford had settled into a sullen, watchful hush. Inside, on Eliza May's bed, Taza was healing. The infection, which had nearly claimed him, had receded under her relentless, obsessive care. She had cleaned the wound daily with carbolic and boiled water. She had fed him broth, and then stew, and she had sat by his bed every night. The Winchester rifle always within her reach. She had slept in the chair until her spine felt like a bent nail. He was still weak. The bullet had torn through the muscle of his side, just missing his lung. A miracle of bad aim and good luck, but he was alive. And he was watching her. Their dynamic had shifted. He was the patient, she the protector. But the equality they had forged on the ridge, the partnership born in fire, remained. It lived in the small spaces between them. It was in the way she did not fuss over him, but tended to him with a blunt, practical efficiency. It was in the way he took her orders, this fierce, independent warrior, accepting her strength as his own shield. She would read to him, in the long afternoons, with the door open to the warm autumn air. She read from her father's books. She read about farming in Ohio, about the histories of kings, about poetry. His face was unreadable, but he listened, and in return, he would talk. He would look out the small window and tell her things. He told her how to read the flight of a hawk to know where the air was rising. He told her which plants had roots that held water. He told her the mesquite tree, which she had always cursed, was a gift, for its beans could be ground into flour and its wood burned hotter than any other. He was teaching her, even from his bed, how to see the land she owned, how to live on it, not just fight it. Abigail Carter was the ghost in their new world. She was broken. The daughter she knew was gone, replaced by this hard, quiet woman who had shot a man and now shared her house with an Apache. Abigail cooked, she scrubbed, she mended, but she moved around the closed bedroom door as if it were a tomb. She would leave food on a tray outside, as if for a prisoner. She could not, would not, cross the threshold. "Your mother," Taza said one afternoon, his voice still a rasp but stronger. She is afraid. Not of me. I know, Eliza May said, her hands busy rebandaging his side. She is afraid of me. She is afraid of what I did. You did what you had to do. I did more, Eliza May whispered. I chose to. It changed me. She looks at me and she sees a stranger, a violent stranger. She sees the woman who survived. Taza said she does not understand that person because she has never had to be her. It was the truth, and it settled between them, hard and clean. Nellie Boone was their only bridge to the town. She came every few days, her basket full, her face a mixture of awe and nervous energy. The news was seismic. Silas Crow, his hands bandaged into useless clubs, had been taken to Tucson by the territorial marshal. His ledgers, in the hands of the bankers, had undone his entire empire. He was charged with extortion, with conspiracy, with attempted murder. He would never come back. Harlan was in the Yuma prison, his one arm a constant reminder of his failure. Brody was gone, disappeared into the territory, a man without a badge, without a boss. The town, Nellie said, was in a state of shock. They were free, but they were also afraid. Their leader, even a bad one, was gone, and the person who had freed them, she was more terrifying than Crow. They talk about you, Nellie said, her voice low, though they were alone on the porch. They do not know what to say. The men, the ones who were in the posse, they are ashamed. You and Taza, you did what none of them dared to. You fought back, but they cannot forgive you for it. Forgive me for what? Eliza May asked, her voice flat. For being right, Nellie said, and for him. She nodded toward the house. They cannot understand it. They cannot accept it. They are waiting, Eliza May, they are waiting to see what you do next. The day came when Taza stood. He was gaunt, his ribs stark, but he stood. He leaned on a stick he had carved. He walked to the doorway of the small room and stood there, looking out at the main room, at Abigail, who was frozen by the stove. Abigail looked at him. Not a ghost, not a savage, a man, a wounded man. In her daughter's house, she did not speak. She turned, her shoulders rigid, and went back to scrubbing a pot. It was not acceptance, but it was not flight. The next day, they were out of flour. They were out of salt. The credit line Harris had promised was waiting at Henderson's store. Eliza May put on her hat. I will go, she said to Taza. He looked at her, his dark eyes searching her face. Alone, to hide me. She hesitated. It was the old instinct, to protect him, to shield him from their hate. I am not a ghost, Taza said. He picked up his stick. I am not hiding. I am the man who lives on this land, with the woman who fights. She looked at him, at his stubborn pride, at the truth he was offering her. Her battle was not just with Crow. It was with all of them, and it was not over. All right, she said. We go together. The walk into Dusty Ford was quiet. Taza moved slowly, leaning on the stick. He wore a clean shirt of her father's, which hung loose on his thinned frame. Eliza May walked beside him, her rifle not in her hands, but carried balanced on her shoulder, like a farmer, not a soldier. They turned onto the main street. The town went silent. It was a physical thing. The sound of a hammer stopped. The talk from the saloon porch died. The women on the boardwalk froze. Everyone stopped. Everyone stared. They saw her, Eliza May Carter. Not the crazy woman, not Crow's Apache woman. They saw the woman who had burned a ranch and faced down a tyrant. And they saw the man beside her, the Apache, walking in broad daylight, walking not as a prisoner, but as her partner. She ignored them. She kept her eyes forward. She led Taza to Henderson's General Mercantile and walked up the steps. The store was full. She saw the faces, men who had been in Brody's posse, women who had crossed the street to avoid Nellie. Elias Henderson was behind his counter, just as he had been. He looked at her, then at Taza. His face was pale. He looked like a man deciding which side to be on, and realizing the choice had already been made for him. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice a nervous squeak. "Mr. Henderson?" Eliza May's voice was clear and cool. It carried through the silent store. "I'm here for supplies. Mr. Harris, from the bank, said you would have a credit line for me." Elias swallowed. He looked at the hard, silent men watching him. He looked at Eliza May's cold, green eyes. He looked at the scarred, dark man beside her. "Yes, ma'am," he said. He pulled out his ledger. "Yes, he did. What did you need?" "Flour," Eliza May said, her voice strong. "2 sacks, and beans, salt, coffee, and seed, rye, barley, whatever you have." It was a declaration. She was not just buying food to survive. She was buying seed to plant. She was staying. She was building. Elias packed the goods. No one spoke. No one moved. Taza stood by the door, his weight on his stick, his presence a silent challenge to the entire room. As they were leaving, loaded with supplies, a woman stepped forward. It was Mrs. Miller, whose husband had been one of the loudest in the posse. She looked at Eliza May, her face a conflict of fear and something else. The fire," she stammered. "It was you." Eliza May stopped. She faced the woman. "Yes." You saved this town from him." It was not forgiveness. It was not friendship. It was a simple, grudging statement of fact, a crack in the ice. Eliza May just nodded. "We are planting, Mrs. Miller. There will be work." She walked out. She and Taza loaded the mule and walked back out of town, the silent stares following them all the way. They did not speak on the way home. They did not have to. The hardest battle had just been won, not with fire, not with guns, but with a bag of seed. That evening, they stood on the small porch. The sun was setting, painting the Dragoon Mountains in strokes of purple and gold. The air was cool and clean. The farm was quiet. Abigail was inside, cooking. They could hear her, for the first time, humming a small, shaky hymn. Eliza May looked out at the fields. They were bare. Her father's broken wagon, which she and Taza had begun to repair, sat by the barn. The work ahead was immense. It was terrifying. "We beat him," she said, her voice quiet. "But we are still here. This land, it is so hard." "It is just land," Taza said. He was standing beside her, his good shoulder just brushing hers. "It gives what it is given." "I have nothing to give it. I am so tired." "No," he said. "You are just beginning." He reached into the pocket of his borrowed shirt. He pulled something out. The antler ring. He had kept it. It had been in his medicine bag, a small pouch she had found and tied back around his neck while he was unconscious. He held it out to her, in his open palm. "I cannot," she whispered. "Taza, I cannot repay what this means. The debt—" "There is no debt," he said. He looked at the ring, then at her. "When I gave you this, I was a ghost. I was bound to a past I could not change. It was a mark of my old life, my old fight." He stepped in front of her. His face was serious, his dark eyes holding hers. "You are not a ghost, and you have made me not a ghost. I am a man, standing on a piece of land, with a home." He looked at her, and his gaze was so full of a deep, quiet love, a love born of respect and shared survival, that it took her breath away. "I offered to help you work your fields," Eliza May said, her voice shaking, a small, watery smile touching her lips. This is a hard harvest. Taza, I do not know if I am enough." He took her left hand. His fingers were warm and calloused, engulfing hers. "Eliza May, You are the only harvest I need." He slid the carved white ring onto her finger. It was not a wedding. It was not a civilized promise. It was something more. It was a union of two survivors. It was a new, wild and free thing, born in the dust and the fire. She looked at the ring on her hand. She looked at his face. She had her land. She had her home. And she had him. She was no longer fighting for her father's dream. She was building her own. They stood together on the porch, side by side, and looked out at the vast, harsh, beautiful land. It was not an ending, it was a beginning, and they were ready. Thank you so much for listening to our story tonight. We would love to hear where you are listening from, so please leave a comment below to connect with us and share your thoughts. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel Wild West Tales. Like this video, and give it a super thanks by pressing the hype button to help this story be heard by more people.